Chapter 485. What an exquisite design! Chu Yang praised from the bottom of his heart. This is just a small trick. Brother Chu must be joking. Du Xiao smiled and took the lead to leave. A trace of complex emotions flashed through his eyes. Du Xiao was obviously aware of the clan's arrangement. To be honest, Du Xiao didn't approve of the clan's arrangement and means. After all, Chu Yang had given him face at that time. He was willing to extend the time limit, and was even willing to propose this alternative method. So, he had already prepared a way out for himself. This was a big favor. It didn't matter whether Chu Yang had any ulterior motives or not. But he had prevented the clan from losing face in front of the heroes of the world. Du Xiao was very grateful at first. And he really wanted to repay Chu Yang. So, he wanted to give him the materials that were worth 525 million at the very least. After all, Chu Yang had the support of 4 big clans. So, his strength couldn't be underestimated. It would naturally be a good thing for the clan if they could have such an ally. However, this situation suddenly changed after they heard about the Xia clan's matter. In the blink of an eye, everyone's thoughts changed. 10 billion in wealth. Moreover, the Xia clan had tens of billions in reserves. What kind of huge assets was this? It couldn't be denied that the total financial resources of the clan and the Xia clan would be greater if the clan could have these assets. The clan's strength would rise to a new level if this wealth was used to recruit experts. The clan was already one of the top clans of the upper 3 heavens. What would it be if it could go one step further? It would replace the Ao clan and become the number 1 clan of the upper 3 heavens. And what did it mean to be the number 1 clan? This wasn't just a matter of ranking. It was more of a matter of appeal. More and more people would come to seek refuge with the title of the number 1 clan. And the strength of the clan would also become more stable. It wouldn't be strange even if the clan were to kill its way to the upper 3 heavens after a period of time. Why is the Ao clan the number 1 clan? Didn't they suddenly discover a treasure more than 200 years ago? The Ao clan used to be similar to our clan. But their strength soared after they got that treasure. What did they rely on to achieve all this? Their financial resources. The words of an elder of the clan had thoroughly aroused the ambitions of everyone. Everyone doesn't know the true value of the treasures that the Ao clan has discovered. But the Ao clan wouldn't be at its current scale if the value of the treasures had exceeded a certain limit. Instead, it was even bigger. Stronger. Therefore, I estimate that the treasure is only worth tens of billions, that's all. Now, we can say with certainty that we will obtain at least the same amount of wealth as Ao clan as long as we obtain all of King of Hell Chu's wealth. In fact, we may even obtain more than that. After all, it contains the treasuries of Xia clan that have been accumulated for hundreds of years. What's the difference between this and a treasure? The future of the Ao clan will rise at this moment. So what are we waiting for? Even if it's risky, we still have to do it once. The elder's eloquent words made everyone's blood boil. That's right. Moreover, these 4 big clans are only supporting King of Hell Chu on the surface. They are relying on personal friendship, and not on the benefits of their clans. This is somewhat thought-provoking. The young clan lord of the Gu clan is in charge of the entire clan. But the Gu clan isn't a top-notch clan. The clan lord of the O clan, O Qing Wu, continued to analyze, and the other clans, Dong clan, Luo clan, and Ji clan, are all second dukes. We may kill them. But we will be removing future troubles for the great dukes of these clans to some extent. So, the backlash won't be too big even if the news leaks out, but who will know that we did it if we do it secretly? The entire O clan had made up their minds under such an atmosphere. And Du Zhao's thoughts had also quietly changed at that moment. For the supreme glory of the number 1 clan, so what if he killed a few people whom he had never met before? Which clan doesn't have a mountain of corpses when it rises in the 3 heavens? How can a real man do things if they are trapped by mere sentiments? Everyone had decided to carry out this operation under the unity of their hearts. The situation had changed. Gu Duxing and the others hadn't followed them. However, this didn't hinder Du Zhao's thoughts. On the contrary, this had aroused his killing intent even more. Do you think this is enough? Do you think that I won't deal with you like this? This is ridiculous. Du Zhao's face was cordial and cordial. However, Chu Yang could clearly feel the coldness in his heart. However, he didn't show it on his face. Instead, his face had become even more cordial and warm. In fact, he had become even more intimate with Du Zhao. The two of them held each other's arms. It seemed as if they were old friends who had fallen in love with each other for decades. In fact, they were confiding in each other. It seemed as if they were speaking the words that were in their hearts. They were so cordial that they could become sworn brothers with just a few words. A big stone room appeared in front of Chu Yang after they had turned a few corners. A sparkling and translucent white light was flickering inside. It turned out to be a jade shelf and a jade box. It was a dazzling lineup. Warm jade shelf, heavenly fragrant jade box. Brother Oh, you've left me dumbstruck. Chu Yang was genuinely startled. The rare warm jade was regarded as a treasure in the lower three heavens. However, it was made into a shelf in this place. The heavenly fragrant jade was second only to the purple crystal in terms of preserving medicinal herbs. The purple crystal could preserve medicinal herbs for 1,000 years. The heavenly fragrant jade couldn't preserve medicinal herbs for 1,000 years. However, it could still preserve medicinal herbs for 500 years. In fact, the heavenly fragrant jade surpassed the white crystal and the blue crystal in terms of preservation. The heavenly fragrant jade didn't have the strange power and spiritual energy of the white crystal and the blue crystal. However, it was still top-notch in terms of preserving medicinal herbs. The preservation of heavenly treasures is far different from that of other medicinal herbs. Du Zhao somewhat sighed and said, "We had spent endless financial resources to get these things in the beginning. So how can we let outsiders know about the bitter process that led to the present scale? Brother Chu, you should understand the joys and sorrows of this process." "That's indeed the case." Chu Yang nodded in agreement. "The rise of a clan is bound to be accompanied by countless bitterness, blood, and tears. Countless heroes have stepped forward one after another for hundreds or thousands of years. Alas, the decline of a clan is very easy." Du Zhao sighed and said, "Yes, there are countless powerful enemies in the heavens. In fact, one doesn't even know when one offends someone. And that person can lead to the extermination of a clan. Countless painstaking efforts of the predecessors have been wasted." "That's right." Chu Yang sighed and said, "But there are two common causes of disaster. First, it's a debauchee. Second, it's a big disaster because of greed." Du Zhao's eyes flashed. He felt that Chu Yang's words seemed to have a profound meaning. Why did he mention greed at this time? He smiled and said, "But riches and honor come from danger. There are many things that one can't help about. Especially when one reaches the top of the pole. One can't take any risks if they don't move forward in an awkward situation. In fact, they will also decline. The helplessness of a big clan is just like the exploration of a hero. Brother Chu, we must learn from this." Chu Yang smiled calmly and said, "Brother O is very wise." However, he didn't speak again. He only waited for Du Zhao to introduce the medicinal herbs. He had wanted to see how Du Zhao would react a moment ago. However, Du Zhao's words had made Chu Yang's heart burn with killing intent. "It seems that you have decided to seek riches and honor? Very good. Very good. Since that's the case, I can only seek riches and honor." Du Zhao probed to see if Chu Yang was aware of it. However, he couldn't help but feel ashamed when he saw that Chu Yang was looking at him warmly. Chu Yang's eyes were shining with kindness and magnanimity. He quickly took 2 steps forward and said, "Brother Chu, please take a look. This is the 5-colored jade petal orchid in the first jade box. This kind of medicine only grows at the bottom of a deep and secluded valley. It doesn't see the slightest bit of sunlight all year round. So, it can only grow 1 color every 100 years. It takes 500 years for it to have 5 colors. This 5-colored jade petal orchid is already brightly colored. Moreover, it already has a jade-like sparkling and translucent divine light. It is at least 1,500 years old. It has a miraculous effect in treating internal injuries. It can also dispel poison. It can be regarded as a divine medicine. Brother Chu, do you like it? Chu Yang carefully looked at it and said, Unfortunately, it would have been a first-grade medicine if it could have completely turned into jade. This plant is precious, but it still lacks maturity. It won't be of much use to me. Du Zhao's face stiffened as he said, Brother Chu is joking. It would have taken at least 5,000 years of maturity if it had completely turned into jade. He closed the lid of the jade box while he was speaking, and pushed it back. Then, he nimbly opened the second jade box and said, Brother Chu, what about this one? This is the Millennium Grass Restoration Pill. The pill's body has already turned bright red. This one. I'll take it if it's translucent and white. Chu Yang continued to belittle it. Du Zhao's eyes flashed. He thought, this guy's vision is very high. It seems that I need some high-grade things. So, he opened the third jade box and said, Brother Chu, please take a look. Du Zhao opened 3 heavenly fragrance jade boxes in succession. But Chu Yang only shook his head. He made a lot of comments, and picked out a bunch of problems. But, he didn't take out any money to buy it. It was obvious that he didn't like these things. He was already 3 or 4 steps away from the first jade box at this moment. Du Zhao gradually became impatient in his heart. He opened the 7th jade box. But he didn't get enough time to open his mouth when he saw Chu Yang's eyes brighten up. He said, This thing is pretty good. He took a step forward, and lowered his head to sniff it. He then said, Not bad, not bad. Du Zhao was delighted in his heart. You finally took a fancy to it. You kept shaking your head. You almost made me lose confidence in these hidden treasures of my clan. He hastily moved closer to Chu Yang, and said, Brother Chu, this one wasn't easy to come by. It was picked from the raging volcano mountain. My clan had dispatched 3 king-level experts at that time. The 2 men gathered in front of the jade box, and started to make comments. Chu Yang finally said, Brother you take a look at this. The market price is about 2 million. I'll offer 2,500,000. How about it? A wisp of a colorless and transparent thing quietly fell on the ground from the hem of Chu Yang's black robe when he had raised the price. It meandered on the ground as if it had a life of its own. Then, it drilled into the first jade box with a schwa sound. I don't have anything else. I only have thousands of brothers as my backing. I only have to fight. He proudly said, Feng Ling has never been afraid of anyone in the past few years when it comes to fighting spirit. I only have 1 life. I only have to see if I dare to fight. That's all. I won't take a step back this month. I beg for monthly votes. I beg for monthly votes. Chapter 486. This jade box was originally tightly covered. But this strange thing was like an all-pervasive ghost. It had only drifted, and had penetrated into the box. There was no obstruction at all. High quality update Du Zhao didn't realize that his heart was brimming with a sense of accomplishment. Moreover, the price that Chu Yang had offered was very fair. So, he straightforwardly said, Since Brother Chu wants it then too. 5 million! He thought in his heart, anyway, you're just warming up your hands. These things will come back in a while. Chu Yang laughed out loud. He personally moved the jade box down, and placed it at the door. He then said, Brother you can put everything I want at the door. You can prepare a big package for me when you move out later. It'll be convenient that way. Du Zhao smiled and said, What's the problem? It's as Brother Chu wishes. But don't you want this jade box? I'm afraid it won't be easy to preserve it if you don't have this. I have my ways. Chu Yang forced a smile and said, I can't buy much if I include the value of this jade box. Du Zhao laughed. The two of them continued to move forward, and opened the 8th jade box. What made Du Xiao depressed was that Chu Yang looked at every jade box. But he didn't want any of them. There were many priceless divine medicines in Du Xiao's eyes. But Chu Yang only glanced at them, and evaluated them. Then, he walked past them. Chu Yang looked at 10 jade boxes in a row. Then, he looked at a dream heart grass, and paid 5 million silver taels. After that, he looked at 5 more jade boxes. Then, he looked at a snow lotus heart. But the amount he paid this time was somewhat big. It was 20 million silver taels. Slowly, Chu Yang finished looking at 150 jade boxes on this side. But he only selected 1 jade box. This was very different from what Du Xiao had imagined. However, he wasn't in a hurry. After all, he would snatch it back no matter how many he chose. He walked to the other side. But Chu Yang was still very picky. He looked at half of the jade boxes, and only selected 2. And the whole morning had passed by. Fortunately, Chu Yang's speed was very fast. Otherwise, he wouldn't have finished looking at them in one day. Eventually, he finished looking at 300 jade boxes. Du Xiao was speechless. But Chu Yang had spent less than 100 million silver taels in this treasure trove. There were exactly 10 jade boxes, no more and no less. Chu Yang looked a little disappointed and said, "Brother O, there's something I don't know if I should say." Du Xiao hastily said, "Brother Chu, there's no harm in speaking your mind. The 1,000-year heritage of the O clan has indeed broadened my horizons. But there are many kinds of treasures here. But it seems that there are only a few of them that are truly good. It seems that in the future, your family will have to put in more effort in terms of quality, and not quantity." He shook his head and sighed. "Take me for example. When I saw such a large treasury, I thought that I would be able to return with a full load. But after looking through it all, I was greatly disappointed. Look at the world-defying stage, come to the world-defying stage. This is different from your family's 1,000 years of reputation." Du Xiao was so angry that his nose became crooked. He thought in his heart, "There are so many heavenly treasures here, but you don't want them. Many of these divine medicines are almost on par with the great wonder medicines. But you can't tell whether they are good or bad. You have eyes but fail to see. And you're accusing our O clan of lacking in resources?" He forced a smile and said, Yes, Brother Chu is right." In his heart he thought, the clan has decided to get rid of this little guy. Motherfucker, he can make me depressed to death. Well, let's go over there and take a look if that's the case. Chu Yang said in a considerate manner, "Brother O, let people move these 10 medicinal herbs out. Then, find a package and put them inside. You don't have to worry about the medicinal efficacy of these herbs being lost." It's just right. Du Xiao gnashed his teeth in anger. He thought in his heart, "You can only recognize these common goods. I used to think too highly of you. It's no wonder that a bumpkin from the lower 3 heavens would know something. Well, let's go out quickly. This is a sealed stone room. The medicinal efficacy will be lost if it is opened once. I don't like these herbs. But they are the painstaking efforts of your family after all, so it's better to close the door as soon as possible," Chu Yang casually said. However, the meaning of his words made Du Xiao so angry that he almost vomited blood. "Brother Chu, you're absolutely right. I will close the door." Du Xiao's complexion turned ugly. He personally stacked the 10 jade boxes together. Then, he lifted them with one hand, and walked out first. Chu Yang chuckled and followed behind him. A wisp of light jumped out of the last jade box in the stone room, and touched the hem of Chu Yang's black clothes. Then, it flashed, and disappeared without a trace. Chu Yang felt a heat in his dantian. The sword point of the tribulation sword had returned with a belch. Then, he stepped out of the door. Du Xiao immediately pressed the mechanism, and locked the storehouse. He thought in his heart, "I've finally invited this god of pestilence out. I'm so angry." Then, he called people to move the 10 jade boxes out. Then, the two of them walked towards the storehouse of precious materials on the other side. Chu Yang thought. Sword Spirit fiercely jumped up. Fuck, where did so much medicinal efficacy come from? This is too much. Sword Spirit suddenly became flustered. Does this little bastard want to explode? This is too much, 10 times more medicinal efficacy than the last time I looted Diwuqing Ro's storehouse of medicinal ingredients. Oh no, it's dozens of times more. Sword Spirit didn't even have time to nag. He hastily used his hand to draw a circle, and drew a transparent area in the tribulation space. Then, he waved his other hand, and countless pure medicinal efficacies rushed in like a torrential flood. Sword Spirit had used 80% of his power to extract from Chu Yang's meridians. However, more and more medicinal efficacies were gushing out from the sword point of the tribulation sword. They were surging violently. Too much, too much. Sword Spirit clenched his teeth, and used all of his power to fiercely absorb. I'll absorb. I'll absorb again. I'll absorb again. Fuck, it's never over. Chu Yang's face suddenly turned red as soon as he walked into another hidden treasure house. Moreover, his body also became somewhat hot. The violent medicinal efficacy suddenly rushed out, and attacked Chu Yang's meridians. It felt as if they were about to break. Brother Chu, what's wrong with you? Du Xiao looked at Chu Yang in a strange manner. Why is your face so red all of a sudden? I'm so surprised. Chu Yang opened his eyes wide in pleasant surprise. His body was slightly trembling. It seemed as if he had discovered a new continent. It's so unexpected, so pleasantly surprised. Brother O, you have so many top-notch forging materials here. It's great. Brother O, I'm a little excited. I hope you don't mind. Haha, Brother Chu is a true lover. How can I take offense? Du Xiao felt very refreshed in his heart. Motherfucker! I've finally made you dumbstruck. Look at how your eyes are shining in shock. Your face is flushed, and your whole body is trembling pitifully. Humph humph. How could my old clan not have any treasures? Chu Yang tried his best to control his body. But he was still unable to endure the violent medicinal efficacies. So, he let out a strange cry, and rushed into the O clan's storehouse. His eyes shone, and his hands and feet trembled. His entire body trembled as he stroked this item, and then stroked that item. Fuck star iron Nightmare steel Wow. Red cloud steel Gosh, there's mysterious golden sand here. Awesome. Is this heavenly silver? This is inconceivable. I'm extremely shocked. I'm so excited, oh my god. Chu Yang was extremely excited while inspecting the items. He was also praying in his heart. Fuck Sword Spirit Great Master, please hurry up. I can't hold on much longer here. Sword Spirit was trying his best to extract the medicinal efficacies in Chu Yang's mind. Soon. You have to hold on a little longer, but I can't hold on much longer. Chu Yang screamed in his heart. Fuck, the medicinal herbs here can't be compared with the ones collected by Diwuqing Ro in the lower three heavens. How can any of these be ordinary goods if they can enter the treasure house of a colossus like the O clan? Every single one of them can lead to a fight. Chu Yang had commanded the sword point to search and confiscate the O clan's property. So, it was very satisfying. However, the consequences were also incomparably fierce. There's a poison spirit behind me. This guy isn't stupid. It would have been bad if he had seen that Chu Yang wasn't excited, and had instead been stimulated by the medicinal efficacies. Eventually, the heat in Chu Yang's meridians began to subside just as he was about to lose control. The medicinal efficacies of the sword point of the tribulation sword had begun to diminish. Sword Spirit also heaved a sigh of relief. He continued to extract the medicinal efficacies and said, It's okay. You've finally returned to normal. The medicinal efficacies were like a tsunami earlier. Even an experienced and knowledgeable person like me was startled. Chu Yang finally heaved a sigh of relief. His complexion also gradually returned to normal. Du Xiao was behind Chu Yang. He was secretly happy to see Chu Yang so excited. However, he couldn't help but feel doubtful when he saw that Chu Yang was overly excited. It's impossible to be this excited, right? He was about to speak when he saw that Chu Yang had already turned around. He smiled embarrassedly and said, "Brother O, I couldn't restrain myself when I saw so many rare materials. Cough, cough. I'm too ashamed to show my face. I've made a joke out of myself in front of Brother O. It doesn't matter. This is human nature. Brother Chu is the embodiment of a real man's true nature. How can I make a joke out of you?" Du Zhao's doubts disappeared. He laughed heartily and said, "It seems that Brother Chu is very satisfied with these things?" Satisfied, satisfied. I'm naturally very satisfied." Chu Yang burst into loud laughter. His complexion had already returned to normal at this moment. The medicinal efficacies of the tribulation sword were still being output. However, the sword's spirit had already absorbed them all. Chu Yang had chosen some relatively precious materials after some bargaining. He hadn't been stingy, and had thrown out more than 8 billion. Du Xiao opened the door, and let the servants of the O clan come in one after another. Then, they moved out all the materials that Chu Yang had chosen. Then, they arranged 10 sturdy carriages according to Chu Yang's request, and put them on the carriages. Come to world-defying heavens to see world-defying heavens. Chapter 487. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Chu Yang drank a few cups of tea and picked his teeth. Then, he calmly said his goodbyes. He declined Du Zhao's insincere invitation to stay. Then, he jumped on his horse, and drove the 10 big carriages away. Boundless confidence. High quality update fastest ***. Send 2 Emperor-level experts to follow him. The rest of you, stand by. Chengwu looked at Chu Yang's departing silhouette, and gave a gloomy order. Don't get too close to them. Come back and report as soon as you discover that they have reunited. Then, the clan will dispatch experts to catch them all in one fell swoop. Yes. The 2 gray shadows flashed at the same time, and chased after him like birds. Chengwu's face was gloomy as he ordered. Second elder, third elder, fourth elder. Yes. Please give your orders, Patriarch. Immediately prepare the family's strong men. The 3 of you will lead the forces of 30 king-level experts. There will be 2 elders and 5 emperor-level experts. Get ready to attack at any time. Yes. Once this matter is started, there is no turning back. He had to kill them all. 11 people from the Gu clan, 1 from the Ji clan, 1 from the Dong clan, 1 from the Luo clan, 1 from the Mo clan, and 1 from Chu Yang. A total of 10 people. If one of them managed to escape, it would be a huge problem. Got it? Yes. This old man is confident that none of these juniors will escape. The second elder's eyes flashed with intense killing intent. The strength of 5 Emperor-level experts and 30 King-level experts was only enough to deal with 15 King-level experts. It was as easy as using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. If the other party still managed to slip through the net with such strength, then it would be the biggest joke in the world. Chu Yang slowly drove the carriage under the moonlight. He looked relaxed and carefree. He didn't look vigilant at all. So, they continued to move forward after they had left the O clan. Chu Yang slowly walked for 40 to 50 miles, and saw a large forest in front of him. Chu Yang drove the carriage to the edge of the forest, and then stopped. He quickly entered the carriage and put the items into the space of tribulation one by one as fast as he could. Then, he asked the sword spirit to make a big wine jar in the tribulation space and threw the 2 poisonous dragon mosquitoes' eyes into it. They were 2 bull-sized pearls, the yin-yang poison dragon eyes. As long as the 2 of them were put together, there was no poison in the world that could not be cured. This thing was an indispensable treasure in the battle against the O clan. After finishing all this, Chu Yang's body flashed, and he sat on the roof of the carriage. He took out a jug of wine from his bosom, and looked at the moon in the night sky. He poured himself a cup of wine, and drank by himself. However, the two Emperor-level experts who were tailing him were very anxious because of this guy's leisurely demeanor. "Fuck you, hurry up. Hurry up and meet up with the other little bastards. This old man and the others can catch all of you in one fell swoop. What was the point of dragging it out like this? Why aren't you leaving? Are you waiting for them here? However, isn't this place too close to our old clan? Do you have the guts? Or do you trust us completely?" After a long time, Chu Yang stretched his body and muttered to himself, "It's already so late. I'm so sleepy." He slid down and made a bed on the floor. It looked like he was going to sleep. The two Emperor-level experts were watching from afar. It seemed as if their eyes were about to spew fire. This bastard! However, Chu Yang was about to lie down when he suddenly sat up and muttered to himself, "Motherfucker, I drank too much wine in the O clan. I'll urinate first. It would be very bad if I were to hold it in during the night." Then, he lifted his pants and rushed into the woods. The two Emperor-level experts were speechless for a while. They then sighed to each other, "Motherfucker, it's our misfortune to have been assigned to follow such a guy. Motherfucker, it's night now, and there's no one around. Wouldn't you have solved this matter if you had lowered your head? You even went into the woods? You're a big man. Why are you so particular about this?" They were speechless when they heard a rustling sound coming from the woods. Then, it seemed as if someone had farted twice. Chu Yang's muttering voice was heard. "Motherfucker, it seems that the O clan is too enthusiastic. I ate a little too much." The rustling sound came from the trees. "It seems that this guy is going to urinate all the way inside." The two Emperor-level experts had black lines on their foreheads. Suddenly a scream was heard. "Motherfucker! There's a black bear here!" Then, they heard the sound of a struggle and the screams of a black bear. The two Emperor-level experts were dumbstruck. They felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Where can you find such a good thing? You can even touch a black bear when you're defecating. The sound finally disappeared after a while. Then, someone's relieved voice resounded. "It's finally done. Motherfucker, a bear came out when I was about to take off my pants." Then, there was no sound for a long time. The two Emperor-level experts felt that something was wrong. They were about to go and take a look. But they suddenly heard a burst of crackling sounds. "This bastard has diarrhea." The two Emperor-level experts were very far away. But they still felt somewhat nauseous when they heard this sound. Their complexions turned pale, and they felt like vomiting. Then, another burst of crackling sounds echoed after a while. Then, another burst of crackling sounds was heard after a while. "It seems that this guy's diarrhea is very serious. Motherfucker, I remember that I didn't poison him in the O clan for fear of arousing his suspicion. Could it be that someone has given him diarrhea medicine?" The two Emperor-level experts were somewhat puzzled. Half an hour passed. But the crackling sounds were still echoing from time to time. The two Emperor-level experts were speechless. "You've eaten a lot, but you must have had a lot of diarrhea, right? How come you still have some left?" After listening to this sound, suddenly, the two Emperor-level experts looked at each other, and saw the suspicion in each other's eyes. Something's wrong. Even an expert can't bear this continuous diarrhea, right? Moreover, he should be able to control it with his cultivation. The two Emperor-level experts jumped up and flew into the woods. They felt that the stench was overwhelming as soon as they entered. They couldn't help but cover their noses. They followed the smell all the way, and finally saw the scene. The two old men covered their noses. And they flew into a rage at the same time. They saw a huge black bear in front of them. It was tied to a tree. It had a very helpless and aggrieved look on its face. Its mouth was stuffed with a piece of star steel. So, it couldn't make even the slightest sound. Moreover, there was a mountain of feces and urine under its buttocks. This was a black bear. Moreover, it was a black bear that had diarrhea. It seems that this black bear's diarrhea has reached the point of dehydration. Chu Yang had caught this big guy, tied it to a tree, and fed it laxatives. Then, he had stuffed its mouth. It was no wonder that the two Emperor-level experts had been constantly hearing the sound of diarrhea for the past 2 hours. As for Minister Chu himself, it was unknown where he had run off to in these 2 hours. There was a piece of paper on top of the black bear's head, and there seemed to be some writing on it. The 8th elder was about to go crazy with anger. He grabbed the paper and saw that it said, "It's late at night. Your Excellency has worked hard. In particular, Your Excellency has patiently waited for the black bear to have diarrhea. Such moral integrity and action are rare in the world. I have just received your clan's generous hospitality, and I have nothing to repay you with. I have specially asked Brother Bear to prepare some gold in order to properly entertain Your Excellency. Your Excellency can eat it according to your taste. Please feel free to enjoy it. It's absolutely not poisonous. Please, please, please. Please don't be polite." Then, he had drawn a big smiley face at the end of the paper. It was brimming with happiness. "Damned son of a bitch. This old man will dismember your body into 10,000 pieces." The 8th elder roared loudly. He put his hands together and smashed that piece of paper into pieces. His face turned purple like a tomato. Crackle! The black bear started again. The 8th elder was so angry that it seemed as if he was about to go crazy. He raised his hand and smashed the black bear's huge body with a thunderous sound. The bear's feces and urine splashed everywhere. The two Emperor-level experts rushed back in a distressed state. They saw the 10 carriages outside. They thought, "Motherfucker! You can leave, but can the carriages also leave?" They stepped forward to take a look, and they couldn't help but cry out in alarm. The carriages were empty. They had been full of materials, but there wasn't even a bit of them left now. Only the 4 horses on each carriage were left. They were staring innocently at the 2 furious elders. "I'm so angry!" The 8th elder and the 9th elder felt extremely angry in their chests. But they couldn't release it. In fact, they felt as if their chests were about to explode. "Continue to chase! I don't believe that this little thing can fly to the sky." The 2 of them made a decision without any hesitation. Then, they suddenly flew out of the forest. They passed through the forest like 2 big birds. Chu Yang entered the forest. Then, he used the inner core of a bear to lure a black bear. Then, he did the same thing. Then, he left silently. Chu Yang's escape was very smooth since the black bear was there to cover him. He crossed the forest in less than a quarter of an hour. Then, he made a few false directions in order to mislead the enemy. Then, he started to go to the agreed place. He went at full speed all the way. In fact, he looked like a fleeting shadow. Then, he flashed in the sky, and disappeared without a trace. He went all the way. Then, he saw Gu Du-Xing and the others moving forward at a leisurely pace. Chu Yang caught up with them at flying speed, and said, "Go at full speed! Find an advantageous place, and get ready to meet the enemy." Gu Du-Xing knew that the situation was urgent. So, he didn't ask any questions. So, he ordered everyone to rush at full speed. Chu Yang held Mo Qingwu in his arms. Then, he put her on his shoulder. The brothers took off the star iron from their bodies. Everyone felt as light as a swallow. It's like a gust of wind passing through the earth. And Mo Qingwu obediently lowered her body. Then, she hugged Chu Yang tightly to reduce the wind resistance. However, she felt a little sad in her heart. "I'm too weak. I can't help Brother Chu Yang. Instead, I'll drag him down. How good would it be if my strength could be of the greatest help to Brother Chu Yang?" The gust of wind blew Mo Qingwu's fine black hair. And Mo Qingwu's heart was filled with a desire for strength for the first time. Such a thought! It's not for anything else. I don't want to be a burden to Brother Chu Yang. I want to help him. I don't want to be a burden. This thought rose in Mo Qingwu's heart for the first time. I want to become a powerhouse. I want to protect Brother Chu Yang. The wind whistled. Mo Qingwu's heart was rolling like a tide. Chapter 488. Chu Yang took out a water bag and threw it to Gu Duxing as they flew. Duxing, give everyone a sip. The enemy might catch up with us at any time. All right. Gu Duxing didn't know what this was, but he knew that Chu Yang must have done this for some reason. So, he raised it and drank a mouthful. Then, he threw it to Dong Wushang. Dong Wushang drank a mouthful and threw it to Luo Kudi. Everyone drank a mouthful of water after this cycle had been repeated for a week. Gu Duxing asked at this moment, Big brother, what's the use of this water? Drinking a mouthful can make you immune to poison for a period of time. Chu Yang softly replied. So, it's the old clan. Gu Duxing got angry. His eyes turned cold. Anti-poison, there's no one else apart from the old clan. Presumably, the old clan wants to snatch the resources in your hands? Dong Wushang asked in a heavy voice. He was usually taciturn, but he was very good at looking at problems. Yes. Chu Yang nodded. The old clan is ungrateful. GMO spat angrily and said, Oh, Du Shao would have disgraced the old clan in MT Dingjun if it weren't for you, big brother. Now, the old clan is biting the hand that feeds them. They're simply inhumane. Gu Duxing smiled and said, But the old clan is trying to be clever and end up with a blunder. They would have had a chance to succeed if they had intercepted us and fought us. But they're too smart for their own good. They sent old Du Shao to lure us into the mountain villa. They wanted to catch us in one fell swoop. They wanted to wait for us to be exhausted. They wanted to take advantage of the terrain. It's a pity that man proposes but God disposes. Big brother found out ahead of time. So, he made us scatter and leave. Then Big brother went in to trade. But they were so anxious that they flew into a rage. But they didn't dare to make a move. Ha ha ha. Dong Wushang instantly understood. So, he couldn't help but happily laugh. Big brother, you must have made some gains after entering the old clan? Luo Kudi curiously asked. It's nothing. I spent 8 billion in the old clan. I bought more than half of the rare and precious materials of the old clan. Chu Yang smiled. I also stole some things from their storehouse while I was at it. Brilliant. Boss, you're really brilliant. The four brothers gave him a thumbs up and prostrated themselves in admiration. Going to someone else's house, going into someone else's treasure vault, and actually stealing something from someone else. This kind of ability could be considered rare. Of course, the few of them didn't know how much Chu Yang had stolen. They only thought that he had stolen a little bit. They simply didn't think that this greedy big brother would actually rob someone's medicinal storehouse in one pot. When he said that he stole some things, he didn't really mean that he stole some things. There was nothing left in the old clan storehouse at present, except for the heavenly fragrance jade box. There should be some ashes in each jade box. We should reach the chill wind forest if we walk forward for another 300 kilometers. The chill wind forest should be a good place to go, Gu Duxing said. The terrain there is complicated. It is suitable for guerrilla warfare. He paused for a moment, and then said, But we need to pay attention to one thing. The old clan must know that an ordinary king-level expert is nothing more than a free meal for us since they want to attack us. Therefore, they would certainly dispatch an emperor-level expert. Moreover, there would be more than one emperor-level expert. Therefore, this battle will be extremely dangerous. It is very likely that the entire army will be wiped out. But there will certainly be casualties even if we are lucky. Everyone must be aware of this. Gu Duxing said, Now, if any of you wants to withdraw, you can do so now. You can go in another direction. We won't stop you. We won't force you either. These words were clearly spoken to the 10 king-level experts of his clan. He knew that none of his brothers would back out. There was no response for a long time after these words were spoken. Gu Duxing's heart sank. He then said, Everyone, you don't need to force yourself. After all, there may be a lack of care between life and death. Moreover, I'll have to trouble you to inform the clan in case something bad happens to us. I'll be eternally grateful. This was a reason. Moreover, it was the only reason that could allow them to leave the battle in an honorable manner. Many people would forget righteousness for the sake of profit. Many people would be greedy for life and afraid of death. Many people would escape in the face of danger. So, they would need such a reason. And Gu Du-shing had taken the initiative to throw it out at this moment. There was an uproar as soon as this reason came out. The three men exchanged meaningful glances with each other. Then, they suddenly stopped and said, "Young clan lord is right. The three of us will go in another direction. We can also attract some enemies for the young clan lord." A cold light flashed in Gu Du-shing's eyes as he said, "Be careful on the way." He didn't look back. Then, he sped away with the others. Only these three men remained. The three men looked at each other. Then, they chose another direction and left. "Big brother, do we really want to attract the enemies for them? Are you stupid? The O clan's headquarters will be besieged by the O clan. They will die for sure. What's the use of the three of us? Let's quickly run for our lives." "Big brother, you're right. We can't escape from the Gu clan if we abandon our masters in the face of danger. So, we'll only end up dead if we return to the Gu clan." The three men's silhouettes disappeared in the dim light of the night. "Young clan lord, we shouldn't let our fighting strength slip away at this time." The old king-level expert of the Gu clan flew into a rage when he saw that his subordinates were fleeing in the face of danger. He wanted to chase after them and kill them. But he was stopped by Gu Du-shing. "Third uncle is overthinking. The more dangerous the situation is, the more we must ensure the purity of the team." Gu Du-shing smiled deeply and said, "These people can abandon their friends and run away. So, it's hard to guarantee that they won't chop off our heads at the most dangerous time of the battle. And we can't afford to take this risk now. So we might as well let them leave on their own." Du-shing is right, Chu Yang continued. "Moreover, they are fleeing for their lives. But how can the O clan not know that there are 10 of us in total? And there's a possibility that the news will leak out if they leave. Therefore, the O clan won't let them off no matter what. So, it's inevitable that they will die in the end. Moreover, they will inadvertently implicate the enemy's pursuing force for us." "You're right. It's really like this." The old king-level expert was called Gu Qingfeng. He couldn't help but be shocked when he heard these words. He saw that Chu Yang and his brothers weren't surprised at all. So, he knew that these youngsters had already thought of this point. So, he couldn't help but sigh and say, "The younger generation will surpass us in time." The two elders of the O clan had been wandering around Chu Yang's area for a long time. Then, they finally found the right direction. But they had already covered 400 miles by the time they had caught up with them. "Quickly send a message to the clan. Tell them that they are rushing towards the Chill Wind Forest. There were originally 10 of them. But 3 of them are missing now. They must have gone to ask for help. We must intercept and kill those 3 people. We mustn't let them escape in any case. Otherwise, there will be no end of trouble in the future," the 8th elder anxiously said as he flew forward. The elder took out a small golden eagle from his bosom. He wrote a few words on it, and hung it on his leg. Then, he loosened his hand, and the small eagle soared into the sky. It circled once, and disappeared without a trace. The 2 elders looked at each other. Then Jiadu caught up with them. "The Chill Wind Forest is in front of us." Gu Du-shing stretched out his hand, and pointed. He saw a dusky area in front of them. It seemed as if the clouds and gloomy fog had gathered here. The chilly wind was angrily howling, and a cold and gloomy aura was assaulting their faces from a few miles away. This Chill Wind Forest is a strange place. And it has resulted in the peculiar topography of this place. You can't see the sun even if you go there in broad daylight. In fact, you can't even see people on the other side if it's serious. Dong Wuxian was afraid that Chu Yang didn't understand these things since he had just come up from the lower 3 heavens. What a good place. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. 2 people are chasing after us from behind. It seems that one of them is a first-grade Emperor-level expert, and the other one is a second-grade Emperor-level expert. The sword spirit hurriedly reminded Chu Yang in his mind. "They are the 2 people who were chasing after you a moment ago." So fast. Chu Yang muttered to himself irresolutely. These two people should be the vanguard. The main troops shouldn't have had enough time to arrive here. The sword spirit reminded him. So to say, these two people are alone? Chu Yang rolled his eyes, and a cruel, murderous intention suddenly appeared on his face. Du Xing, return immediately after we enter the chill wind forest. Prepare for an ambush. Chu Yang quickly said in a low voice on one side. There are 2 Emperor-level experts of the O clan behind us. This is our only chance to break through them one by one. Good. A sharp light flashed in Gu Du Xing's eyes. He waved his hand and shouted. Increase the speed. Everyone crossed the distance of 5 miles with a few whooshing sounds like a black cloud, and entered the chill wind forest. The dreadful chilly wind and gloomy fog engulfed everyone's figures. Gu Du Xing issued an order as soon as they entered the forest. Everyone stopped. Then, he started to make arrangements without any explanation. The remaining 7 sovereigns were arranged together in a relatively safe location. Mo Qingwu was placed on a distant tree by Chu Yang. Mo Qingwu felt even more uncomfortable as she watched Chu Yang turn around and leave. I want strength. I want strength. I want strength. Ah. I should have been by elder brother Chu Yang's side when he was fighting. I shouldn't have been watching him from afar with anxiety. Mo Qingwu's heart was getting more and more urgent. The remaining 5 brothers were naturally arranged by their big brother, Chu Yang. Du Xing and GMO are on the left. Wu Shang and Kudi are on the right. I'll take the lead. Chu Yang looked at the 4 brothers in an indisputable manner. I'll use a thunderbolt method to make them fall into a passive situation in one fell swoop. Then, you guys look for the right opportunity to attack. You must inflict heavy damage on the enemy in the first strike. They are 2 Emperor-level experts. You mustn't give them a chance to recover their energy and react. Yes. The 4 agreed at the same time. They unsheathed their sabers and swords, and held them in their hands. They would inevitably make a sound if they pulled out their sabers and swords at that time. Therefore, they held their sabers and swords in their hands in advance. They want our wealth. So, we'll take their lives. Chu Yang coldly said. This is only the beginning. Everyone held their breaths as Chu Yang made a gesture. Chapter 489. It was very late at night. It was almost dawn. The chill wind forest had become even darker. The whistling chilly wind was blowing softly, and was issuing a ghost-like wailing sound. 2 shadows flashed, and appeared at the entrance of the chill wind forest. They were the 8th elder, and the elder of the O clan. The 2 of them hid behind a large boulder in a flash. They carefully examined the surroundings, and finally confirmed that the other party had entered the chill wind forest. Let's go in and take a look. The 8th elder and the elder looked at each other. They could see each other's thoughts. The chill wind forest is certainly dark. But this also has its advantages. We can't see the other party, and the other party can't see us either. However, the divine sense of an Emperor-level expert is much stronger than that of a King-level expert. The higher one's cultivation is, the more advantage one has in this forest. We can kill them as long as we figure out the other party's position. And we can stall them even if we can't kill them. This will make it easier for the team to act after daybreak. The 2 of them had made up their minds. They floated up, and went inside the chill wind forest. They were Emperor-level experts. Moreover, they were tracking in the dark. So, it was impossible for the other party to discover their tracks. Therefore, they weren't very concerned even though they were on guard in their hearts. Their self-confidence was completely reasonable. After all, Chu Yang and the others couldn't discover them if they were alone. However, Chu Yang had a sword spirit that had cultivated for more than 10,000 years inside his body. Suddenly, they heard a ghost-like wailing and wolf-like howling sound. The 2 of them couldn't help but force a smile. This chill wind forest deserves its reputation. They spread out their divine sense to explore, and cautiously moved forward. They couldn't even see their own fingers after they had taken 3 or 4 steps. Chu Yang didn't hesitate in the fog when they had entered the chill wind forest. He immediately launched an operation. His black clothes fluttered, and he appeared in the dense fog like a demon god. His long sword flashed, and he silently launched a move. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? The two elders felt darkness before their eyes as soon as they entered. So, they couldn't help but subconsciously close their eyes. Suddenly, the dense fog in front of them fluctuated. Then, an extremely swift and fierce sword light suddenly appeared. It went straight for thousands of miles, and swept away everything in its path. The sword light was so sudden that neither of them had anticipated it. In fact, there wasn't even the slightest sign before the sword light had appeared. With a flash of sword light, it was already in front of his eyes. This sword strike was so terrifying that even the two Emperor-level experts had never seen it in their 100 years of experience. The two of them simultaneously felt a boundless murderous aura enveloping them. His entire body felt cold. With a fierce roar, he hastily fought back. With two clanging sounds, two swords were unsheathed at the same time to meet this sword light. However, the strength that he hurriedly used was far from the strength that he should have. Moreover, this sword was the double heaven sword technique that had been extinct in the double heaven continent for 10,000 years. The world's #1 sword art. The sword with the greatest killing intent. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? The sword light was like a thunderbolt in the sky, striking down. Like a bolt of lightning, it came into contact with the two men's hastily raised swords. With a crackling sound, the long swords that had been in their hands for a long time turned into fragments in an instant. The sword chi surged wildly, and the two of them simultaneously spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the sword power of the newcomer didn't stop. It continued to rush forward aggressively. Under the counterattack of the two Emperor-level experts, Chu Yang's chest became stuffy, and his throat became squeaked. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he forcibly endured it. The sword light flashed again, and the sharp will buried deep will not change. Gathering the wind and clouds to become the Emperor. Two moves with murderous aura continued to appear. Chu Yan wanted to use all the moves of the Calamity Sword technique in one go. However, he felt a piercing pain in his chest as soon as he used these two moves. The counterattack of the Emperor-level experts wasn't the full strength of the counterattack, but it still wasn't something that Chu Yan could easily withstand with his current cultivation. Chu Yan had no choice but to give up his original plan. However, these two moves had already filled the sky with dazzling sword light. It suddenly covered down like an inescapable net. The sword light was like rain, and the sword energy was everywhere. With a few schwa 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 sounds, several crisscrossing bloody wounds appeared on the two men's bodies. They were so deep that their bones could be seen. Blood spurted out. The two men were shocked. They were scared out of their wits. They frantically attacked a few times with their palms. Then, they recklessly retreated to the left and right. Chu Yan would have been like an arrow at the end of its flight if they hadn't retreated. Then, he wouldn't have posed any threat to them. Moreover, their previous arrangement wouldn't have had any effect on them. However, they had no choice but to retreat. The first sword move had already scared them out of their wits. They immediately confirmed that the opposite party was an Emperor-level expert. Moreover, it was a sword emperor. Otherwise, how could he issue such a swift and fierce sword move? And such a mighty sword power? They would have been courting death if they hadn't retreated in the face of a hidden sword emperor. They could have turned defeat into victory, and saved their lives only by retreating first and stabilizing their footing. Therefore, they had no choice but to retreat first. However, they had delivered themselves to the edge of the sword by retreating and dodging. A biting cold sword intention was issued from the left. Gu Duxing, the Sword King, had made his move. However, his long sword had already pierced out like a viper before this sword intention had arrived. His target was the heart of the eighth elder. At the same time, a cylindrical swordlight flew out. Jimo's body and sword had merged into one. He silently flew high in the sky, and recklessly attacked the eighth elder on the left. The elder staggered back on the right. He screamed out in pain. But a tall and sturdy figure suddenly jumped high in the sky before he could react. Then, a dark and heavy saber fiercely chopped down with a might that could chop off a mountain. This saber strike didn't have any follow-up moves. It didn't have any ingenuity. However, he had concentrated his entire body's essence, energy, and spirit on this saber strike. This saber strike was sure to kill. Even if the sky is in front of this saber strike, I will separate him. Then, a sword light pierced out from behind him like a viper. Second young Master Luo Kudi had sinisterly blocked all the escape routes of this Emperor-level expert. The elder let out a desperate scream. He had suffered 3 consecutive attacks of a peerless sword technique in a hurry. So, he had sustained serious injuries. He was still in a state of shock. But he hadn't expected that a wild tyrant saber king had been arranged to block his escape route. He hastily raised his left hand and circulated his martial power to block the attack. Then, he quickly took out a small and exquisite dagger with his right hand and went forward to meet the attack. He flew back at the same time. He would be able to save his life if he could block the attack, even if his arm would be crippled because of it. Snap! The saber fiercely chopped down, and his left hand was cut off. The dagger in his right hand went forward to meet the attack. Then, the saber chopped down indifferently like a sovereign descending to the world. Dong Wuxiang was a sovereign with a saber in his hand. No one would dare to disobey a sovereign descending to the world. This was an innate imposing manner. No one could imitate it. Clang! The dagger broke. The saber carried a wild and violent force, and suddenly chopped down on the forehead of this Emperor-level expert who was retreating. Blood appeared. Luo Kudi's long sword pierced into the back of this Emperor-level expert's heart without any reservation at this moment. This Emperor-level expert had been thoroughly cut off from the front and the back. The saber continued to fall. Then, it accurately chopped this Emperor-level expert into 2 halves from the top of his head to his crotch with a schwa sound. The elder had attacked with his palm before his death. But it was already powerless. Dong Wuxiang had kicked him out. And half of his body had turned into a rain of blood in the sky. Dong Wuxiang's figure coldly appeared at this time. His stature was tall and sturdy. He looked like the legendary god of war. His blade-like vision was looking at Gu Duxing's battle situation. Gu Duxing's sword was like a thunderbolt on the other side. It was faster than the speed of light. In fact, the black dragon sword was sprinting at such a short distance. But the friction between the sword and the air had become hot. Puff! The sword pierced through the heart. The 8th elder had the cultivation of a second-grade Emperor-level expert. But he didn't have enough time to react. The sword pierced through his heart. However, his staggering footsteps didn't stop as he retreated. Gu Duxing had already begun to withdraw his sword and retreat when he felt a pain in his chest. The 8th elder exposed a cruel and desperate smile on his face. He suddenly pounced forward, and let the sword pierce through his heart once again. He then pounced forward. Duxing, withdraw your sword! Chu Yang roared. Gu Duxing loosened his palm, and fiercely dashed away from the side. The 8th elder's palm hit empty air with a bang sound. Only a small part of his strength brushed past the side of Gu Duxing's body. Gu Duxing spat out a mouthful of blood with a wah sound. His body repeatedly rolled. The 8th elder ferociously roared, and was about to step forward to pursue and attack. However, a brilliant light flashed in midair at this moment. Ji Mo's body and sword merged into one. Then, a gorgeous and resplendent beam of light rushed over, and engulfed the 8th elder's entire body in the sword light. This second-grade Emperor-level expert didn't even have time to issue a final cry. He turned into minced meat under the gorgeous sword light. The sword light converged. GMO picked up the boiling black dragon sword, and rushed over. Second brother! Second brother, are you all right? I'm fine. Gu Duxing felt as if half of his body had been torn apart. But he resisted the pain, and stood up straight. Then, he received the black dragon's sword. This fight had ended as soon as it had started. It was so fast that there was no time to react. Everything had already been settled. 2 Emperor-level experts had died in such an unjust ambush. Everyone looked at each other, and felt somewhat horrified. GMO and Luo Kudi were still in a state of shock after the fight had ended. They had been focused on killing the enemy a moment ago. So, they hadn't felt anything. But they couldn't help but feel weak in the knees as they recalled the fight. Even Dong Wushang and Gu Duxing were somewhat worried. Emperor-level expert. He was such a high and aloof existence before this. And the target that we're working so hard for has died in our own hands? It turns out that a king-level expert can also kill an emperor-level expert. Dong Wushang let out a long sigh. That indescribable melancholy in his voice gradually subsided. Instead, a strong killing intention gradually rose in his body. The saber energy on his body also became more and more berserk. Something called self-confidence violently gushed out from his body. It seemed as if this short fight had released the demon of slaughter from his heart. Not only him, but the temperament of Gu Duxing, GMO, and Luo Kudi had also changed after this fight. After all, they had successfully killed Emperor-level experts with the cultivation of King-level experts. It had been a siege and an ambush. However, the invincible image of Emperor-level experts in their hearts had collapsed with a loud rumble. Chapter 490. One must know that Emperor-level experts were at the peak of the 3 heavens. The big clans had monarch-level experts of higher levels. However, they were old monsters who had lived for God knows how many years. In fact, they wouldn't appear even once in a few decades. Some of them wouldn't appear even once in 100 or 200 years. Even his own family didn't know and didn't dare to confirm if these people were still alive. The impression that the 3 heavenly emperors were invincible had been deeply engraved in everyone's heart for a long time. In fact, it had even developed to the point where there was a rumor. The big clans of the 3 heavens can have a foothold in the 3 heavens if they don't have an emperor-level expert. Becoming an emperor-level expert had become the lifelong goal of the 3 heavens youngsters. Therefore, the Gu clan had imprisoned Shu Miaoling because of the promotion of an emperor-level expert. This was admittedly a kind of motivation. However, it was also an invisible shackle. That was because Emperor-level experts were so supreme that they could become Liduo. However, what would happen if they realized their lifelong Liduo? Therefore, many experts of the 3 heavens would have a feeling of arriving at the dock after they had cultivated to the Emperor level. Mentality was extremely important for martial arts. This feeling was basically announcing that they had reached the end of their life. Gu Duxing and the others had grown up in such clans. So, it was inevitable that they would have this mentality. Therefore, Chu Yang wanted to break this mentality. Chu Yang wanted to lead his brothers to take the initiative to kill Emperor-level experts even though the O clan hadn't dealt with them yet. He wanted to break this mentality. This kind of illusory myth would be broken only if an Emperor-level expert would die in front of him, and by his own hands. The real purpose of Chu Yang's arrangement for this robbery and killing was to walk through this mental path. And this was a very important part of it. Not just Emperor-level experts. We can even kill Monarch-level experts as long as we make proper arrangements. Chu Yang smiled faintly. His voice was filled with a kind of fanatical self-confidence. This kind of self-confidence quickly spread to the brothers. The 5 of them didn't speak. But their eyes were shining. It was a kind of light that had broken through the shackles of their hearts. They felt their fighting spirit boiling at this moment. In fact, they had even forgotten about their injuries. Everyone had the same thought in their hearts: king-level experts can kill emperor-level experts. They can even exterminate monarch-level experts. But what if we reach monarch-level experts? Wouldn't we be able to exterminate saint-level experts? If this continued, what was a supreme martial artist? Chu Yang let out a sigh of relief. He knew that these people had completely passed through this mental journey. So, he finally felt relieved. Only then did he feel the pain in his body. In the battle just now, Chu Yang's early attacks were the most important. Therefore, the injuries he suffered this time were also extremely serious. Right now, he had limitless medicinal energy in his body. He had all the incomplete heavy pills he needed, so he didn't have to worry at all. She and Du Du Xing each ate one, and it didn't take long for them to recover. Gu Du Xing let out a sigh of relief. He opened his eyes and said, "So this is what it feels like to kill a strong enemy. To think that I even had the other 7 people lying in ambush at the back, prepared for them to come out and make the final strike if we couldn't do it. I didn't expect that it would be completely useless." Everyone laughed. In this battle, we have formed a few initial formations that are worthy of being proud of. Chu Zhang concluded. Wu Shang's aggressiveness, Du Xing's acute spirit, and Ji Mo's courage in defeating the enemy. These are the most precious things. And they will be our biggest reliance in the future. You must firmly remember the characteristics of your brothers. The future battles will be ever-changing. So you must maximize your strengths on the basis of possibilities. Only then will you be able to reach the end. Gu Du Xing Dong Wu Shang, and the others deeply nodded. Moreover, killing an expert isn't that easy. You can kill an expert, but it depends on how you kill him. You can have self-confidence. But you can be blindly conceited, and drag us down to hell. We must be careful about this. Chu Yang said in a profound manner. Yes. The people of the O clan will probably arrive soon. Everyone get ready. Chu Yang issued an order. The bodies of the brothers floated up, and flashed into the chill wind forest. Chu Yang picked up Mo Qingwu, and also stepped inside. He felt that something was wrong after walking for some distance. Mo Qingwu seemed to be somewhat silent compared to usual. "Qingwu, what's wrong with you?" Chu Yang asked. "Did you get scared a moment ago?" "No." Mo Qingwu pursed her lips and shook her head. She pouted her small mouth, and didn't speak. "Then, do you miss home?" Chu Yang continued to probe. "No." Mo Qingwu shook her head again. Chu Yang continued to make several guesses. But Mo Qingwu kept shaking her head. Finally, Mo Qingwu pouted her lips in an aggrieved manner. She then timidly said, "Elder brother Chu Yang, little Wu is very useless, right?" "Useless?" Chu Yang was startled. "Why do you say this?" "Yes, but I always feel that I've become a burden to elder brother Chu Yang." Mo Qingwu's small mouth flattened. She then said while weeping, "I can only hide on one side and watch every time elder brother Chu Yang goes to fight. I can only watch whether you win or lose. I want to help you, elder brother Chu Yang. But I don't have the strength." "Boo-hoo!" Mo Qingwu sobbed as she spoke. She then sadly wiped her tears with the back of her small hand. "I'm so useless. How can Qingwu be useless?" Chu Yang said anxiously. "With Qingwu by my side, it's so useful." Elder brother Chu Yang's mood improved when he saw Qingwu after the fight. "No matter when, as long as Qingwu is by my side, I'll be happy. Qingwu's usefulness is something that no one can compare to. But my strength is so low." Mo Qingwu's mood improved a lot. Her voice lowered, but she was no longer flattening her lips. "She's weak, but she can still practice. Moreover, Qingwu is still injured. After 10 or 20 days, I'll find Dukyu and get the materials from him. Then I'll be able to heal Xiao Wu's 3 meridians. Once little Wu's 3 meridian is healed, she can cultivate. Then she'll surpass elder brother Chu Yang in a few days." Chu Yang smiled and said, "In the future, elder brother Chu Yang still hopes that Qingwu will protect me." "Really?" Little Lua widened her big teary eyes and looked at him. "You're not lying to me, right?" "Of course not," Chu Yang vowed. And Mo Qingwu believed him. She was in a good mood. She sat on Chu Yang's neck and twisted. She said happily, "Humph, wait until my martial arts are good. I'll always protect elder brother Chu Yang. I won't let anyone bully me." She lowered her face and looked into Chu Yang's eyes. Her black hair fell on Chu Yang's neck. She blinked her eyes and said as if she was swearing, "Elder brother Chu Yang, don't worry. I'll protect you for a lifetime." Protect me for a lifetime. Chu Yang was stunned. His imagination ran wild. For a lifetime. Yes. For a lifetime. And Mo Qingwu nodded vigorously and said firmly, That's great. Chu Yang laughed and said, I'll remember that Qingwu will protect me for a lifetime. Hee hee, hee hee. And Mo Qingwu happily laughed twice. Her two calves swung in front of his chest a few times. Then she tilted her head and imagined the scene of Chu Yang being protected by her. She couldn't help but giggle foolishly. Then she stopped talking. After a long time, she asked anxiously, Elder brother Chu Yang, then, can I ask you a question? What question? And Mo Qingwu smiled pitifully and said somewhat pleadingly, Inside your clothes, whose hair is that? She looked at Chu Yang's face a little guiltily and said softly, That day, elder brother Chu Yang's face was really ugly. Chu Yang was speechless. He didn't expect this little girl to see it that day and hold it in for so long before asking now. Compared to this little girl, it was also very difficult for her to hold it in. But this question was really difficult to answer. It's... Chu Yang hesitated. And Mo Qingwu asked sadly in a low voice, Is it sister-in-law Chu Yang's? No. No. Chu Yang's whole body trembled and he immediately denied it. Fuck, this little lass is imagining a sister-in-law out of thin air. Things are getting out of hand. So it's not. And Mo Qingwu heaved a sigh of relief. She suddenly felt a little better. She also didn't know why, but she was happy to hear Chu Yang deny it. She actually hummed 2 lines of a song before asking again. Then, what about sister-in-law? Where did this sister-in-law come from? I don't have a sister-in-law. Chu Yang's breathing became heavy. Why did this little girl keep on using the word sister-in-law? No sister-in-law, that's great. The little girl rolled her eyes and suddenly said coquettishly, Elder brother Chu Yang. I remember, back in the lower 3 heavens, you said that you wanted me to be your fiancé. The little girl started to dig up old scores. And she actually pressed on very rhythmically. Chu Yang's eyes rolled back and he was weak. On the other side, Gu Du Xing and the rest were afraid that Chu Yang would hear them. They all held their breaths and covered their mouths with all their might. Their whole bodies were twitching. What are you saying? The little girl pouted unhappily and asked anxiously, Do you remember? Do you remember? I remember. Chu Yang said vaguely. He was sweating profusely. He had a feeling that Gu Du Xing and the others were not far from here. They could hear everything that was going on here. But now, he was being interrogated by this little girl. Just think about it. Being interrogated by an 11-year-old girl about sensitive topics like fiancé and sister-in-law. And he had no choice but to brace himself. And there were many people eavesdropping around. Then, do you admit it? Chu Yang did not give any details. The little girl was about to get angry. She grabbed elder brother Chu Yang's ear. Yes. Of course. Chu Yang nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking rice. Humph, that means you don't have a sister-in-law. And Mo Qingwu pouted triumphantly. The little girl had a habit. She liked to pout when she felt wronged. She would also pout when she was happy. But one of them had her head down, while the other had her head up. The expression on her face was very different. Of course not. Chu Yang hurriedly said and wiped off his cold sweat. Then let me be the sister-in-law. Little Luo's face was red. She was so young, but her eyes were like water. When she saw Chu Yang looking at her in shock, she actually let out a shy and feminine snort. Chapter 491. Ha ha! Jimo's body twisted as he rolled out, laughing. You're going to be the sister-in-law. Great, we're still waiting to call you sister-in-law. Dong Wushang also couldn't help laughing. And Mo Qingwu looked at the 4 people who came out from the left and right, stunned. Suddenly, her face and ears turned red. She was extremely shy as she stammered. You. Luo Kudi pinched his nose and twisted his waist. I remember you said that you want me to be your future wife. Then I'll be the sister-in-law. Okay. You guys. Annoying. And Mo Qingwu was instantly embarrassed. She suddenly lowered her head and pressed it against Chu Yang's back. Her little face was burning. Her 2 legs hung in front of Chu Yang's chest, kicking with all her strength. She wouldn't raise her head no matter what. It's okay. Chu Yang smiled as he comforted her. Humph. And Mo Qingwu snorted. She was even more embarrassed. Ha ha ha. Gu Duxing and the others were laughing wantonly. They were laughing so hard that they were spitting out rice. Humph. You guys are still laughing. Eavesdropping on others, you guys are still laughing. And Mo Qingwu kicked her legs angrily. Her muffled voice came from Chu Yang's back. Cough cough, stop laughing. Chu Yang had no choice but to use his authority as the boss. What's so funny? But such a little girl actually wants to be our sister-in-law. GMO cried out. His whole body was twitching, almost cramping. After a long time, under Chu Yang's suppression, they finally stopped laughing one by one. It was just that they were all suppressing it, but their bodies were still trembling. It's okay, stop laughing. Chu Yang held back his laughter and patted Mo Qingwu's hand. Mo Qingwu carefully peeked out from Chu Yang's back. She saw a few twisted faces trying to hold back their laughter. She couldn't help but pout and say angrily, "Still say you're not laughing." She shrank back again. Chu Yang coaxed her for a long time before she finally calmed down. Her face was red as she lowered her head, looking helpless. Okay, they dare to laugh at you. When you really become my sister-in-law, you'll teach them a lesson. Chu Yang gave an empty promise. Yes. And Mo Qingwu nodded vigorously. Then, she pouted and said angrily, "You guys, just wait and see." GMO grinned. He wanted to laugh again, but he was stopped by Gu Duxing. "You're still laughing. You idiot. The enemy is coming." The people of the O clan had indeed arrived soon. The 3 Emperor-level experts and 30 King-level experts started to hasten on their journey as soon as they received the news. Moreover, a King-level expert was sent to chase after the 3 people of the Gu clan who had escaped. However, it wasn't easy to reach the chill wind forest for hundreds of kilometers. The experts of the O clan finally arrived at the chill wind forest when the sun shone brightly in the morning. They saw the region in front of them that was filled with evil spirits and monsters. So, everyone wrinkled their brows. What about Old 8 and Old 9? Where did he go? The second elder frowned. Along the way, there was no news from the 8th elder and the 1st elder, which made everyone puzzled. The 3rd elder said, "It's possible that the 2 of them have already entered the chill wind forest. Something can have happened, right?" The 4th elder said in an uncertain manner. "Ha." The 2nd elder calmly smiled and said, "Old 4th, do you think that 20 king-level experts can kill an emperor-level expert? It's possible if 20 king-level experts go all out, and the emperor-level experts fight to the death." The 4th elder was startled and said, "What about those 2? One of them is a 2nd-grade emperor-level expert." A trace of disapproval flashed through the 2nd elder's eyes. "That's absolutely impossible," the 4th elder replied. "Then, what are you still doubting?" The 2nd elder snorted. He then waved his hand and said, "Go in. There's a vast expanse of open ground outside the Chillwind Forest. There's nowhere to hide. Our people are monitoring that place. But they haven't sent any news. This means that those little bastards are still in the Chillwind Forest. There's no time to lose since this is the case. We'll kill our way in. I believe that Old 8th and Old 4th are also waiting anxiously." He smiled cruelly and said, "Kill them as soon as you see them. Don't leave them alive. We're only responsible for bringing those things back." "Yes. Divide into 3 teams. You and I will lead 8 people each. We'll search in 3 directions. Let out a long whistle if you find anything." The 2nd elder made a prompt decision and said, Advance in a fan-shaped manner. Then, the distance between each team must not exceed 1,000 feet. And the distance between people must not exceed 100 feet. Yes. There's no time to lose. Let's move out immediately. The second elder waved his hand. 27 people quietly entered the chill wind forest. There are traces of a fight here. They had just entered the forest when they had discovered something. Look at this. The fight must have been very fierce. There's a lot of bloodstains. This shows that the fight was extremely fast. The fight must have been settled in a very short time. The second elder lowered his head and looked carefully. There's a sword fragment here. It's been cleaned up. But it can still be seen. He pinched his hand in the air, and a fragment was sucked into his hand. He carefully looked at it and said, "This fragment has cloud patterns. Moreover, it's sparkling with light. This shows that this sword was mixed with star steel. Such a sword is of divine quality. So, how could it be broken?" He was startled by his own words. Was an eighth brother's sword mixed with star steel? The third elder and the fourth elder's complexion changed as they thought of this. The three of them started to look around. And they slowly found a few small fragments. Their complexions became increasingly unsightly. These fragments are faintly exuding black smoke. This can only happen if they're mixed with nightmare steel. This is old brother's sword. The second elder's complexion became more and more dignified. Both of their swords were broken here. So, it shows that they were the ones who fought here. Then, whose blood is this? The third elder's face was full of fear. Second brother had said that the fight should have been very short. But their swords were broken. So, the fourth elder spoke until here. He looked at the second elder and the third elder, and saw the shock in each other's eyes. There was only one possibility. Someone had launched a surprise attack here. And the swords of the eighth elder and the fourth elder had been broken, and they had died. "There's a trace here!" someone shouted. "There's also a trace here!" The three of them looked left and right. And their complexions sank like water. There were traces of a person who had stepped on the ground and borrowed the force to fly. And that was the kind of trace that could be left behind. This should have been a premeditated sneak attack judging from the location of the battlefield. It's not enough to attack these two sides. The strongest person on the opposite side must have attacked them head-on, and forced them to come back. Then, the people on both sides would have had the opportunity to attack. And the person on the opposite side must have had a cultivation that wasn't weaker than those two. The second elder clenched his teeth and bitterly said, "In other words, there's an emperor-level expert on the opposite side in this chill wind forest. He's lying in ambush. And eighth elder should have suffered a big loss. In fact, he might have already died." Everyone's complexion changed. "Let's go in first. Immediately warn us if you find the existence of this expert. The three of us must kill this bastard in one go. Otherwise, it's inevitable that we'll suffer heavy casualties today," the second elder said. "Why should we split up since the opposite side has such a person?" the fourth elder asked. "Why don't we go in together?" "Idiot! Why would the opposite side launch a sneak attack if they had the strength to kill us in one fell swoop? This shows that they can only deal with one or two people even if they launch a sneak attack. So, their assurance isn't big either. Do you think that they'll dare to come out if the three of us are together?" the second elder said in a resentful tone. "We must lure them out first." "So, that's how it is," the fourth elder nodded. Then, the three teams entered the chill wind forest in accordance with their prior agreement, and slowly moved forward. Everyone was very cautious now. They had completely lost the confidence they had had when they had first arrived. Even a team composed of such experts felt somewhat jittery at the slightest sound. "They've come in," the sword spirit said in Chu Yang's mind. "How many people?" Chu Yang asked in his mind. 27 people. 1 third-grade Emperor-level expert, 2 second-grade Emperor-level experts, 7 King-level experts, and the rest are between 4th and 5th-grade King-level experts. They're divided into 3 teams. Each team is led by an Emperor-level expert. The leftmost team is a bit stronger. The sword spirit cautiously calculated. The sword spirit suddenly felt somewhat aggrieved as he said this. Emperor-level expert? Motherfucker, when did I start calling this bunch of trash Emperor? The O clan is really willing to spend a lot of money, ah? Chu Yang sneered in his heart. It can be said that they've dispatched such a big force to deal with us. The misleading formation at the entrance should have aroused their vigilance. They should have thought that there's an expert inside. Therefore, they won't dare to come in so arrogantly. They're being very cautious, the sword spirit said in a somewhat amused manner. Well, our odds of success are very big as long as they don't swarm us without any scruples. Chu Yang nodded, and exposed a sinister smile on his face. How's the preparation? Chu Yang turned his head and asked. Almost done. Gu Duxing seemed to have asked something. Then, he replied, only Luo Kudi's trap isn't ready yet. But it'll be ready soon. Good, Chu Yang said in a low voice. They've already come in. Gu Duxing nodded, and silently retreated. On the other side, Dong Wushang and GMO looked at each other from afar. They could only see each other's flickering eyes in this dense and gloomy place. The murderous intention in their hearts was blazing. The O clan is purely using the method of encirclement to deal with us this time. But they won't be able to imagine that the prey in their eyes has turned into the hunter. And they themselves have become the real prey. And they're moving towards the carefully arranged trap of the hunter. Chapter 492. This is a dusky forest. The reason why it is called the Chillwind Forest is because there are two big mountains on the left and the right. These mountains block the flow of wind from the east and the west. And there is a mountain pass in front of us. The mountain pass is very narrow. So, even a very small wind will make a very loud sound when it blows through this mountain pass. And the most amazing thing about this forest is that there is a towering ironwood forest from the mountain pass to here. The sound of the wind passing through this ironwood forest changes into the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves as the sharp branches of the ironwood forest rustled in the wind. And someone must have taken advantage of this natural condition to draw underground water from the ground of this forest. Moreover, it's a hot spring. And the water vapor evaporates. But it can't disperse. So, it can only be digested in this forest. And this dense forest has been formed over the years. And the formation is playing a decisive role in this. Chu Yang had said this when he had been arranging the strategy. His words were even more detailed than those of the original residents of the 3 days. **** Baidu's search network high-quality update ****. This had made Gu Duxing and the others somewhat embarrassed. They also found it somewhat unimaginable. Big Brother has just arrived. So, how can he be more clear about these places than I am? And these are our advantageous conditions. Even if these conditions are disadvantageous to us, they can be advantageous as long as we make good use of them. Because what's disadvantageous to us is also disadvantageous to the enemy. We must remember these words under any circumstances. Chu Yang insipidly said. He was using all the time he had to instill all the theories he knew into his brothers. Many of these theories were commonplace. But Chu Yang still had to say them. And Gu Duxing and the others were also listening very seriously. Because some words spoken by family members and teachers were far less useful than those spoken by trusted people. This was a common psychological state of people. For example, one would have regretted not having enough knowledge when they were very young. But it would have been decades later. And they would have experienced setbacks. Then they would have heard these words from other people's mouths. And their hearts would have been touched at that moment. Then they would have realized the true meaning of these words. But it would have been decades too late by that time. The most effective way to deal with the people of the O clan in such an environment is to ambush and use poison, Chu Yang calmly said. At present, the traps we've arranged are... Wait. GMO raised his hand. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he asked. Use poison? Using poison against the O clan? Boss, what do you think? They are experts in using poisons. Well, the O clan wouldn't have thought of it since even you couldn't think of it. Chu Yang sneered. They've been famous for their poison for a long time. They've always been conceited. Therefore, if others use poison to deal with them, they'll be more defenseless than ordinary people. It's just that, what kind of poison can prevent them from discovering it? That's something worth pondering over. Gu Duxing's eyes lit up. He increasingly felt that Chu Yang's every step wasn't too brilliant, but he was walking in a blind spot that no one would have thought of. Just this point alone was enough to put him in an invincible position. Perhaps no one had thought of using poison to deal with the O clan in the past 3 days. However, he was constantly pondering in his heart. What poison should I use to deal with the O clan? Using ordinary poisons would only be a joke. It had to be a poison that they couldn't detect. Furthermore, it had to be done in an ingenious manner. There's still 700 to 800 pounds of the poisonous flood dragon's meat left. Sword Spirit said in his mind, I can refine the poison, but this poison is too overbearing. I'm afraid that the poison part of this place will become a poisonous area for a long time once it's used. It's hard to avoid harming innocent people. Chu Yang's eyes lit up as he said, This isn't a problem. I can smear it on my sword and saber. It's only limited to these 2 parts. I just need to clean them up after killing the enemy. However, some of the original traps will be wasted in this way. It's a pity. Let's do it this way. We'll still use the traps. But we'll set up a warning sign in the poisonous area after we use it. This will warn the future people that this place is poisonous. Sword Spirit remained silent for a moment. Then, he said, This decision is up to you. The 3 heavens are a big Jianghu. How many people are innocent in Jianghu? Anyone who can enter the chill wind forest isn't a good person. There's nothing wrong with killing them. Chu Yang nodded and said, Since that's the case, it's settled then. Chu Yang didn't feel anything about this. It was just as Sword Spirit had said, how many people were innocent in Jianghu? The weak were prey to the strong in the 3 heavens. Which of the people who could come here didn't have a blood debt? Chu Yang had always been decisive when it came to killing. So, he promptly made a decision. At this time, a message came that Luo Kudi was ready. Sword Spirit promptly reminded him that the O clan's people weren't far away. Chu Yang immediately arranged. GMO. Let's start. GMO let out a strange cry. Don't worry. A wood dog ant. Everyone laughed. The O clan's people spread out in a big circle. The 3 elders were in the middle of their respective teams. They formed a big arc, and slowly advanced inside. The more they went inside, the more gloomy and damp they felt. It was broad daylight. But the clouds and mist were curling up. So, their line of sight was extremely unclear. Their eyes were useless even if they were 20 or 30 feet away from them. Therefore, everyone was on high alert. They didn't dare to be careless. They had been going inside for half an hour. Suddenly, a faint sound of fighting was heard from afar. Are there people fighting here? The second elder and the others were startled. They quickly went towards the place where the sound was coming from. The more they went forward, the more they felt that the fight was intense. The second elder raised his white eyebrows and said in a deep and low voice, Many people are besieging one person. The others looked at each other. Then, they went forward even more cautiously. Who's fighting? Is it the person we're chasing to kill? It would be great if that's the case. A faint sound of cursing was heard. Kill this monster! Quickly! The O clan's people will soon catch up with us. Everyone, let's attack together! Shoulder to shoulder! The second elder smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. His eyes exposed a cruel, murderous intention. Juniors! We've finally caught up with you. But who's fighting with them? Suddenly, a burst of angry and anxious mumbling sound was heard. It seemed that the speaker was extremely angry. However, he was also extremely sullen. What's he talking about? An expert of the O clan tilted his ears in puzzlement. But, He couldn't hear anything clearly. He wasn't the only one. All the people of the Oak clan were also confused. They couldn't hear what was being said. Well, they couldn't understand what was being said. After taking a few more steps, he suddenly heard the sound of metal clashing. A strange voice filled with extreme anger could be faintly heard. Dog of dog! Pitter-patter! Sister-in-law's hometown! Wah dog aunt! The second elder looked around in confusion, and found that everyone had a confused look on their faces. Could it be that he's cursing someone? An expert of the Oak clan cautiously guessed. Listening to his tone, it's definitely not something good. Another person frowned and said, But what is he talking about? How come I've never heard anyone talk like that before? At this moment, there was another explosion, and the voice was filled with rage. Sister-in-law, you're from the same hometown. Waste oil and rice, woolly woolly woola woola how? Whip gula mommy oiny big wind monkey. Wah dog aunt. Wah. Dog aunt. His words are very strange. An expert of the Oak clan scratched his head. I can't understand a word of it. The other expert also had a depressed look on his face. His eyes were wide open like a duck listening to thunder. The second elder, the third elder, and the fourth elder were experienced and knowledgeable. But they also couldn't understand a word of it. However, they heard the voice of this person become more and more hurried. And the fight also became more and more intense. Suddenly a scream was heard. Sister-in-law, you're from the same hometown. Dog aunt. Then, a mumbling sound of cursing was heard. Then, another scream was heard. The situation of the fight seemed to have shifted to the left. It seemed that the person was trying to break out of the encirclement. But it then shifted to the right. This person is injured, the second elder said with certainty. The second elder is very wise. He's able to accurately judge the situation of the fight by relying on such a small clue. He's truly a godlike person, an expert on the side said with a face full of admiration. The second elder stroked his beard and nodded cheerfully. Everyone looked at that guy with contempt. Motherfucker. This guy is screaming so miserably. He must have been injured. Anyone with a bit of brain would know that. How is this wise? If you were in his place, would you scream so miserably in your normal state? Even if you want to flatter someone, you can't do it like this. It's truly disdainful. Surround him. Don't make any noise. The second elder made a prompt decision, and waved his hand to order. His voice hadn't faded away when the fourth elder's people had already started to surround him. They had just flown over, and hadn't had time to attack when they saw the thick fog in front of them shake. Then, a person's figure fell out in a sorry state. He flew hundreds of feet high in the air, and fell to the ground. Then, he stood up like a carp, but fell down again. He was cursing loudly. Way, sister-in-law, you're from the same hometown. Wah! Dog aunt! Dog aunt! Everyone saw this, and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They saw that this person's body was thin, and his stature wasn't tall. But he had a strange appearance. His hair had 5 colors, and there was a strange horn in the middle of his hair. His nose was rolled up, and one of his eyes was red, and the other was blue. The flesh on his body was overturned, and it was too horrible to look at. Blood was flowing out from countless places. The strangest and most surprising thing was that the blood flowing out of this guy's body was sparkling like stars. Moreover, there was a golden star mark on his forehead. It was very eye-catching. He's from the Star Clan of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. The second elder was worthy of being called experienced and knowledgeable. He had recognized him from afar. Everyone exclaimed in admiration. The second elder is erudite and knowledgeable. However, the second elder couldn't help but be full of doubts. No wonder we couldn't understand what he was saying. He's from the Star Clan of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. But why are the people of the 3 Stars Divine Clan here? That strange man was lying on the ground. He raised his head, and saw that so many people had surrounded him. His eyes emitted a panic-stricken light, and he kept crawling backwards. he said in a sorry state. Dog aunt! Sister-in-law, you're from the same hometown. Sister-in-law, you're from the same hometown. Sister-in-law, you're from the same hometown. Damn, I'm sick of it. Dog aunt! Chapter 493. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. This is the dialect of the Three Stars Divine Clan. Who can understand it? They were about to speak when they saw the miserable appearance of this guy. But they heard a burst of movement in the dense fog. Everyone, run! The people of the O clan have arrived. Swish! 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 The second elder and the third elder angrily rebuked and chased after them. But there was nothing left. They only saw a big bloodstain on the ground. **** Baidu's search network high quality update ****. Who are you? Are you from the Three Stars Divine Clan? Are you? The fourth elder frowned as he looked at this strange guy who had fallen on the ground. He wanted to go forward and touch him. How can this guy grow into such a strange shape? Even if he's from the Three Stars Divine Clan, he looks a bit shabby. Wow! Are you tired of it? Wow! Are you tired of it? Dog aunt! Dog aunt! This guy screamed in horror. It was obvious that the elders couldn't understand what he was saying. But he couldn't understand what the elders were saying either. The duck listens to thunder, and the fog is evil. The fourth elder and the few people beside him looked at each other in dismay. There's a language barrier. What should we do? They listened to this guy screaming himself hoarse in fright. But they couldn't get anything out of him. Then, a king-level expert of the O clan volunteered to come forward. This guy had a younger brother who was mute. It was said that he was very good at making gestures. Everyone felt relieved. How could we forget about this? Now, the interpreter has arrived. This king-level expert walked in front of this monster, and made a posture of beating him up. Then, he made an injured appearance. He then pointed in the direction where Chu Yang and the others had fled, and asked, Huh! The eyes of this monster of the Three Stars Divine Clan suddenly lit up. He stood up, and made a posture of beating someone up. Then, he made a posture of sneak attack. He then said with infinite indignation, Wow! Are you tired of it? How? Dog aunt! That expert nodded in affirmation. He made a sympathetic and understanding expression. Then, he made an angry gesture, and made a posture of chasing and attacking. He patted his chest, and asked with a posture of courage, Huh! You mean I'll help you take revenge? Is that okay? This Three Stars Divine Clan monster's spirit was immediately roused. He drew a circle with his hand, encircling all the people in front of him. He drew a large area, and then, with one foot in front and the other behind, he hopped 2 steps on the spot in a chasing posture. He then asked in high spirits, Wow, are you tired of it? Uh-huh. That expert of the O clan nodded in affirmation. He thought to himself, this is great. With this guy leading the way, we can immediately find Chu Yang's group. Alwu Dog Ant. This monster of the Three Stars Divine Clan immediately jumped up in excitement. But then, he groaned and looked at the wounds on his body with a distressed expression. He raised his head to look at the fourth elder and the others. Then, he spread out his hands. His facial features squeezed together in pain. Wow! Dog Ant? What he means is that he's in a lot of pain and has no strength left. This expert of the O clan looked at the fourth elder in a very clear manner. He then confidently translated. This wow means pain in the Three Stars Divine Clan's language. The fourth elder looked at this guy's tattered body, and wrinkled his brows. I didn't bring much medicine with me. And I reckon that this guy will use up more than half of it. Do I have to waste it on him? That monster of the Three Stars Divine Clan started to tremble while he was hesitating. He then cried out in despair. Wow! Wah! 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 Then, he slowly fell to the ground, and his hands and feet began to twitch. Treat his injuries. The fourth elder looked at him in disgust and shouted. Therefore, everyone stepped forward and applied medicine to the wounds on this guy's body. This guy was crying wow and wow. His face was wrinkled, and his hands were restless. He politely shook hands with everyone who came to apply medicine to him. He would cry wow and wow if one didn't shake hands with him. The 4 king-level experts had no choice but to pinch their noses and shake hands with him. Then, the king-level expert who acted as a translator mobilized his spirit power and treated his internal injuries. Only then did he stand up. With a bitter expression on his face, he wailed twice and rummaged around in his armpit. It seemed that he had fished out a black pill. Then, he tossed it into his mouth and chewed it twice with a smacking sound. Everyone who saw this scene couldn't help but feel disgusted. How did this guy rub the dirt from his body? Or did he take medicine? Fuck. I've never seen such a disgusting thing. The 3 Stars Divine Clan is indeed the 3 Stars Divine Clan. I've seen this fucking thing. Everyone cursed in their hearts. They tried their best not to vomit. However, the next scene left everyone gobsmacked. They saw that the terrifying wounds on this monster's body suddenly healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wounds closed and formed scars in a short while. Then they saw that this guy stretched out his hand and stroked them. And the scars fell off. He moved his arms and legs, and could move freely. Everyone's eyeballs fell to the ground. Is there such a miraculous medicine in this world? They suddenly felt that they had been fooled. Why would you use our medicine if you have such a good medicine? Wow, dog auntie. You're a beautiful coquettish dog. This strange man looked at his own body, and nodded in satisfaction. Then, he looked at everyone with a disdainful look in his eyes. The meaning behind his words was, "Your medicine is too inferior." Everyone almost fainted. Fuck. We've been despised by a monster of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. The 4th Elder's eyes lit up. If we can get the formula of this miraculous medicine after this matter is over, then, wouldn't the O Clan's world-defying heavens soar to meteoric success? This is an opportunity given to our O Clan by the heavens. The strange man turned around impatiently and made a gesture with his hands, indicating that he was going to chase after them. Then, he made a gesture with his hands, indicating that he was going to put them into his pocket. Then, he made a gesture with his hands, indicating that he was going to put them into his pocket. He had an anxious look on his face. It seemed as if he would get caught if he was late. Well, he said that there's a treasure over there. He's fighting with them for that treasure. It's a very important treasure. So, he'll be taken away if he's late. The king-level expert who had been acting as a translator was very smart. He clearly explained the movements of this monster's limbs, a good thing that this monster is so anxious about. Everyone's eyes lit up. So, they urged him to move forward. This monster was very familiar with the way. He passed through the dense fog as if it were his own home. He then hurriedly rushed in a direction. The people of the 4th Elder followed closely behind him. The people of the 3rd Elder outflanked him from another direction. The people of the 2nd Elder were slightly behind him. They were taking the aerial route. They were jumping over trees one by one. Everyone held their breaths tightly. A 3-pronged attack from 3 directions. We must not give these guys the opportunity to escape again. The 4th Elder and the others suddenly felt their legs go soft as they walked. Looking down, all he could see was a patch of land that was half swampy. The soles of their shoes were wet. That strange man was still leading the way. His feet were splashing mud everywhere as he stepped on them. The 4th Elder waved his hand. Speed up! Everyone obeyed the order and chased after him. Their feet slowly became softer. And more water stains appeared. Eventually, the mud covered their feet. Many water stains had splashed on their calves. After walking for a while, everyone's legs were dripping with mud. Even their skin was stained with it. Only the boots of the 4th Elder were not stained on his body. But the other 8 people were not spared. The last king-level expert felt a little itchy on his calf. He couldn't help but bend down and scratch it a few times. But he didn't expect that he would scratch a big piece of flesh off his calf. and his pale bones were exposed. He didn't feel any pain at all. Moreover, the 5 fingers on his right hand had also turned into white bones after he scratched his hand. His flesh and blood fell down neatly. This king-level expert had just shaken hands with this monster of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. He looked at his hands and feet in extreme fear. He suddenly felt extremely frightened. In fact, he didn't even dare to breathe. Water has such a terrible poison? What's going on? Boo-hoo! The king-level expert was stunned for a while. He then asked while crying. But the 3 Stars Divine Clan's monster who was leading the way suddenly looked in a certain direction. Then, he let out a loud cry of extreme alarm the moment he asked this question. This voice was mournful. In fact, it seemed as if a ghost had appeared in front of him. The 4th elder rushed forward to take a look. He saw that there was a newly dug big hole under a big tree in front of him. And that monster was pointing at this big hole. He was crazily screaming. His face was mournful, and his voice was miserable. Boo-hoo! 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 The monster turned his head and shouted at the 4th elder. The 4th elder was confused. He asked, "Is it here?" He pointed at the big hole. The monster nodded repeatedly. He pointed at the 4th elder and shouted, "Boo-hoo! Boo-hoo! 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 Boo-hoo!" The 4th elder wrinkled his brows. The last king-level expert finally came back to his senses. He loudly shouted, "4th elder!" Then he flew up and pounced over. The 4th elder instinctively turned his head. Suddenly, that monster crazily raised a big pile of muddy water from under his feet. It was like a screen that connected the sky. It splashed on everyone's body. The 4th elder's face and neck were also stained with a lot of mud. He couldn't open his eyes. The 4th elder was caught off guard. He angrily turned his head and shouted, "Bastard! You want to do?" However, his soul suddenly flew out of his body. He saw a bright beam of light suddenly appear in front of him. This monster of the 3 Stars Divine Clan had fiercely brandished his sword, and was rushing towards him. The 4th elder's eyes were still covered by the muddy water. He hastily retreated with all his might. The long sword in his hand also burst out with a brilliant sword flower. He then counterattacked and blocked the attack. He was confident that he would be able to block any kind of attack. Chapter 494. The figure of this strange man shook as he laughed out loud. He fell down from the big tree, and disappeared in the fog with a schwa sound. This 3 Stars Divine Clan was the second Master GMO in disguise. Sure enough, the attack was successful. Baidu's search network's high-quality update the 4th elder was furious. He was about to chase an attack when he suddenly saw his subordinates looking at their feet in horror. The 4th elder looked down, and couldn't help but shout loudly. He then spouted out a mouthful of blood. He saw that his subordinates were standing there like wooden chickens. Their faces were full of despair. The few people who had held hands with that monster were in an even more miserable state. Their hands had turned into bones. The few people who had lifted up their pants to look screamed even more miserably. Only the bones of their calves were left to support them, not a single trace of blood or flesh could be seen. Furthermore, there was a black color that was silently spreading upwards. Wherever it reached, the flesh there would start to rot silently. Moreover, they couldn't feel anything from this rot. What kind of poison is this? The 4th elder took out a handful of detoxification pills in a flurry, and stuffed them all into his mouth. It could be said that the O clan's detoxification pills were the best in the world. But he couldn't feel anything even after taking so many pills. The 4th elder lowered his head to look at his legs. But he discovered that his eyes couldn't see anything after he lowered his head. He stretched out his hand in horror, and touched his face. But a large piece of flesh fell off, and he couldn't even feel the bones. 4th elder! 4th elder! The anxious voices of the second elder and the third elder came from afar. They had clearly discovered the situation here, and were rushing over with all their might. "Don't come over!" The fourth elder exhausted the last of his strength, and loudly shouted. His voice was sobbing. "The water here is poisoned! We'll lose our lives if we touch it! We're done for! Don't come over! Don't come over!" He had become hoarse by the time he had spoken the last sentence. Then, he spat out his tongue with a puff sound. His throat issued an extremely sullen muffled groan, and he fell to the ground while facing upwards. The surrounding 8 people scattered in all directions in fear, as if they would be saved if they left this place. However, each of them only managed to run 4 or 5 steps before their legs were so rotten that they could no longer support their bodies. With a splash, they fell into the water. When the second elder heard the commotion, he had already flown over. When the fourth elder shouted, he had already begun to fall down. But when he heard the warning, he immediately grabbed a branch and hung his entire body in the air. With a cracking sound, the tree branch broke. He had already used his weak strength to climb up the tree. The third elder also led his people to join the second elder's people. The 18 people were dumbfounded as they watched the fourth elder and the others rolling in the muddy water. Then, they slowly rotted. They couldn't even make a sound. They slowly wriggled and twisted into white skeletons. In the end, even the white skeletons gradually melted and rotted, returning to the original swamp. A few bubbles appeared on the surface of the swamp, and after a moment of turbulence, a cloud of mist rose up and merged with the dense fog above, restoring the swamp to its original state. It seemed as if nothing had happened here. Even a godly scout wouldn't be able to see that a human life had been swallowed in this tranquil swamp. Moreover, it was the life of an expert. 1 emperor-level expert, and 8 king-level experts. The second elder, the third elder, and the others were in a daze as they watched their brothers die. They had turned into corpses, and had turned into swamp water. However, they were dumbstruck and at a loss of what to do. Their hearts were in extreme pain. However, they couldn't do anything about it. The third elder looked at this swamp in a daze. His lips squirmed as he nervously said, "Old man, what kind of poison is this?" "Fourth brother, what is this?" The second elder looked up to the sky, and let out a long and loud howl. Then, he let out a heart-wrenching and blood-sobbing roar. "Chu Yang! Gu Du Xing! You little dogs, this old man swears to the heaven and earth. I swear that I won't be a man if I don't tear you to pieces." Several sneers seemed to be heard from the distant dense fog. "Chase after them!" The second elder's face was filled with murderous aura. He was mad with anger. "You can use poison. But can our old Bing clan use poison?" Everyone became even more cautious as they chased after them. Everyone was carrying a few small animals in their hands. They would throw one animal over to check if there were water stains or swamps. Then, they would hurry on with their journey depending on the situation. The big trees in the surroundings were out of luck. Their branches were broken off one by one. They were thrown on the water's surface, and stepped on to fly away. They were extremely cautious. But, nothing had happened. However, nothing unexpected had happened along the way. They searched for a while. They felt that the ground under their feet was getting softer and softer. It had turned out to be half swamp-like ground. They lowered their heads, and saw that there was a faint flow of water. The second elder took a deep breath. He threw out a snake first. Everyone felt relieved when they saw that snake swimming in this swamp in a panic. The second elder wrinkled his brows. He suddenly thought of a wonderful idea. He took a deep breath. Suddenly, his whole body emitted black smoke. He slowly stretched out his hands as if he was holding a baby. The black smoke rose from his palms. Then, it suddenly disappeared. He then pressed his palms on his dantian. A layer of snow-white area was visible to the naked eye. It started to extend from the feet of the second elder. It started to spread rapidly as it came in contact with the water stains on the ground. In fact, it looked like a snow-white layer of salt frost had spread on the ground at a very fast speed. Every place that it came in contact with had turned into a frosty white color. The frosty white quickly spread up the tree even if it came in contact with it. And the entire tree had turned snow white in an instant. And this strange white color was still rapidly extending inwards. A few water snakes rushed out of the swamp. But they twisted twice as they fell into the range of this white frost. Then, their bodies stiffened, and became motionless. The ants and insects along the way were poisoned to death. Even some birds on the trees fell down with a bang sound. The entire chill wind forest had suddenly turned into a death zone. Poison evil divine technique. This was the O clan's secret technique. Every member of the O clan had this technique. However, the second elder was already an expert if he had practiced to such a level. Chu Yang and the others would undoubtedly die if they came in contact with this white fog. The second elder had absolute confidence in himself. I haven't heard of anyone who has been able to break this poison evil divine technique of the O clan in the past 3 days. Using poison to counter poison. You've poisoned my brothers. So I'll poison you to death. The range of the poison evil divine technique was getting bigger and bigger as the second elder strode forward. It was getting denser and more extensive. More and more small creatures were dying. In fact, they were even floating on the water's surface. Layer. The eyes of the other experts of the O clan lit up as they saw this. This method is good. It saves us the time to be on guard. Moreover, it can kill the enemy directly. Therefore, they all followed suit. Therefore, the range of the white frost continued to spread. 18 people launched the poison evil divine technique in a short time. And the range of the poison evil divine technique had expanded to several thousand feet in a short time. They slowly moved forward in this manner. They would be safe as long as they saw earthworms and the like coming out of the ground after the poison evil divine technique had passed. Therefore, the speed of everyone on the ground had increased a lot. Big brother, what should we do? Luo Kudi nervously asked from afar. Many of the traps that Chu Yang had set up had lost their effectiveness due to this kind of advance. Chu Yang frowned as he pondered bitterly. However, he realized that he didn't have any good method to deal with the enemy's battle formation after a long time. All the traps would be detected as long as the enemy's poison evil divine technique passed through them. So, how could he take advantage of this situation? Chu Yang's eyes suddenly lit up as he looked at the poisonous fog that was advancing like a forest of salt frost. He turned his head and said, "Let's have a decisive battle since this is the case. But we must do this and this." GMO, Luo Kudi, and Dong Wushan came over with a wave of his hand. They listened to Chu Yang's words in a low voice. So and so, but the 4 of you must go all out when the time comes. You must entangle one of the 2 Emperor-level experts, do you understand? Chu Yang's voice was very cold and gloomy. He clenched his teeth, and a sinister look appeared in his eyes. Gu Duxing, Dong Wushang, and the other 3 slowly nodded with heavy expressions on their faces. Dong Wushang asked after a long time, "Big brother, can you do it alone?" Chu Yang clenched his teeth and said, "I have a 40% chance of success as long as I operate well." 40% chance of success. Dong Wushang and Gu Duxing looked at each other. Their expressions slowly turned, they said, "Good. King-level experts have a 10% chance of dealing with Emperor-level experts. Let alone 40%. The 2 of them didn't hesitate. Gu Duxing immediately turned around and gave instructions to the experts of the Gu clan. Suddenly, the atmosphere became unprecedentedly tense. The second elder and the others spared no effort in urging their poison techniques. They slowly searched the entire chill wind forest. But they didn't find anything. They had already arrived at the heart of the chill wind forest. "I don't believe that you can grow wings and fly away." The second elder clenched his teeth in anger. "Continue." He hadn't finished speaking when they suddenly heard the sound of a heavy object falling down in front of them. It fell into the swamp with a bang sound. This caused a burst of dense moisture. Listening to this sound, one could tell that a human body had fallen to the ground. The second elder's eyes lit up. He hastily said in a low voice, "Let's go over and take a look." Be careful. The third elder agreed, and walked over to the side. More than a dozen people surrounded him from behind. Big brother, first launch your domain to protect your whole body. Everyone else, don't stop releasing your poison techniques, the second elder hastily reminded him. Then, he launched his own domain as he spoke. A layer of completely transparent spirit energy violently gushed out of his body, and formed a transparent spirit energy shield around his body. Even the dense fog inside this spirit energy shield obeyed his command, and gathered to one side. Yes. The third elder also launched his domain. But his complexion was sad. He sighed and said, Big Brother 8 hasn't comprehended the power of the domain since the beginning. Big Brother 4 has comprehended it. But he hasn't had the opportunity to use it until now. The second elder's face twitched in pain. He then said, Let's go. He took the lead and walked out. Some people were already flying as the poison technique spread. But they fell down halfway, and heavily fell into the swamp. They should be Chu Yang and the others judging from their clothes. They walked for more than 100 feet, and saw a particularly dense forest in front of them. However, the poisonous fog had already corroded the forest. And all the trees had turned white. More than a dozen people were lying down under the trees. Some of them were constantly struggling. Some of them were barely standing up. But their complexions had turned blue, and they were drooling from the corners of their mouths. Chapter 495. You bastards! Give me back my fourth brother's life! The third elder was somewhat agitated. He roared and was about to pounce forward. Wait! Be careful of a trap! The second elder reached out and grabbed him. His eyes were bright as he looked at the scene. He waved his hand and a flash of lightning whizzed out. It was a dagger. It was aimed at Gu Du Xing, who was at the front. The target was Gu Du Xing's chest. Obviously, he wanted to kill someone first to confirm it. After all, they were faced with a life and death crisis. Even if they had a trap, they would still take action. At that time, they would be able to see if they had set a trap again. Gu Du Xing's eyes turned cold as he showed a determined look. This dagger was not fast. He could have caught it with his hand. As for dodging, it would have been even easier. But as long as he dodged it, it would prove that these people were pretending. At that time, they would have been completely wiped out. He looked at his brothers with reluctance. His body twisted with difficulty. It seemed that he could not dodge it anymore. Gu Du Xing had decided to sacrifice himself for this mission and the lives of his brothers. The dagger light whizzed over. Young lord! A mournful cry was heard. Suddenly, a person beside Gu Du Xing fiercely jumped up. He staggered and pushed Gu Du Xing to one side. His movements were so slow that it seemed that he could not dodge it anymore. He used his chest to meet the dagger. Boom! Blood splattered everywhere. The dagger was deeply inserted into the chest of this king-level expert. His face twitched in pain. Then, his body stiffened, and he slowly fell down. Blood flowed out of the corners of his mouth. He had stopped breathing. Uncle Wang! Gu Du Xing shouted. His eyes suddenly opened wide. He was indescribably sorrowful. However, when the second elder and the others saw this scene, they laughed heartily. Clearly, these people had really been poisoned. Otherwise, they would have been able to dodge such a slow dagger. Not to mention, they would have lost the life of a king-level master. Catch them and bring them here. I want all of them alive, the second elder said ferociously. I want to torture them to death one by one. I want to take revenge for Old 4 and Old 8. With a command, the 10 experts behind him took a step forward at the same time. Like wolves and tigers, they rushed towards the people in front of the field who no longer had the power to resist. The third elder had rushed to the front. His movements were the fastest. He grabbed Chu Yang and tied him up. He then said with an evil grin, King of Hell Chu, you've also fallen into this old man's hands. Chu Yang looked at him weakly and said with a bitter smile, Using poison to plot against me, What kind of ability is that? Bullshit. Just now, you used poison to plot against my fourth brother. Is that honorable? The third elder angrily cursed and shouted. Take them all away! The 10 king-level experts received the order, and grabbed one person each. Some of them even fiercely shoved them. After retrieving the weapons, Zhang Xian felt more at ease. He grabbed it and walked back. Why is there one person missing? The second elder looked from afar and frowned. Including the dead one, we are still missing a little girl. Where is that little girl? An unforeseen event suddenly happened while he was in doubt. The captives that the 10 king-level experts were holding in their hands were half dead. But they suddenly moved one after another. Their fists and palms shot out at the nearest distance, and fiercely struck the vital points of the king-level experts who were holding them in high spirits. They attacked their chests, heads, lower body, and dantians. Moreover, they kept attacking. Countless punches and kicks fell on the bodies of these people. Suddenly, a burst of intense sword light erupted from the bosom of the third elder. The sword light was so sharp and overbearing that it caught the third elder off guard even though he had already activated his domain. The sword light shot out like thousands of cold rays of sunlight. Then, it unceasingly pierced the domain with a puff sound. Then, it gathered into a bunch and crazily rammed into the domain. It broke a hole in the domain's spirit energy shield with a bang sound. Then, it crazily released a violent storm of attacks. Blood-curdling screams were heard from that side. The 10 king-level experts of the O clan had been beaten into a pile of mud in the blink of an eye. Gu Du Xing and the others didn't utter a word after they had launched their attacks. They snatched their weapons without any hesitation. Then, the four brothers merged their bodies with their swords, and rushed towards the second elder with thunderous roars. Another king-level expert of the Gu clan shouted loudly, and snatched his weapon. Then, he faced the remaining king-level experts of the O clan. It was a one-on-one fight. The killing began in an instant. The bodies of the 10 king-level experts softly fell to the ground at this time. Some of them were already dead. Some of them weren't dead. But they were on their last breath. They had been attacked by experts of the same level in their bosom. And they had been laughing all the time. So, they hadn't been able to guard against it. The second elder didn't get enough time to warn them. But an unforeseen event had already happened. He couldn't help but stare in anger. He furiously roared, and saw 3 sword lights and a tyrannical saber light cover his body. He furiously roared, and his face was filled with murderous intention. Good juniors. This old man will tear you apart alive. He flicked his wrist, and the sword light flashed. Then, he angrily rushed forward. The 5 people crazily fought in a group in an instant. Chu Yang had already become ruthless on that side. The first 12 sword moves of the Calamity Sword were launched at the same time. Then, the 4 sword moves that he had created were launched at the same time. He didn't even look at the state of the third elder in front of him. He just kept his head down, and unleashed the strongest attack he could muster. The third elder's screams shook the clouds. He was also caught off guard. The only thing that made him stronger than the others was that he had activated his protective domain. However, such a domain couldn't withstand a single blow from the Calamity Sword. It had been broken by the second move. But it had also won him some time to retreat at a fast speed. However, Chu Yang's attacks followed closely behind. They were getting faster and fiercer. The third elder suddenly had a feeling, I'm standing in front of the sea. And I'm facing the rising tide of the sea. Or I'm standing at the bottom of a cliff. But a landslide has suddenly occurred. Moreover, the landslide is accompanied by a flash flood. The third elder was in for a tragedy. He desperately pulled out his sword to block, but after blocking twice, he found that his sword had already been shattered into pieces by the opponent's sword. Then, he felt pain in his palm, chest, back, and eyes. He roared. His heart beat wildly. He cursed. He trembled and twisted under the sword light. Then, with a boom, he turned into mincemeat under the dazzling sword light. At this time, Chu Yang had only launched the 7th move of the Calamity Sword. However, He could no longer stop. He actually continuously attacked the air that was filled with flesh and blood, and madly attacked with another 7 moves. In the blink of an eye, sword energy soared into the sky in this narrow area, moving unhindered. He finally finished and withdrew his sword. However, there was only a bloody mist in front of him. He couldn't even see a strand of the third elder's hair. The attacks were too concentrated. Chu Yang didn't hesitate. He immediately took out an incomplete version of the heavy pill and stuffed it into his mouth. He circulated it to restore his strength. Then, he launched an attack on his sword without stopping. He went straight to Gu Duxing and the others. On the other side, the 4 king-level experts were crazily attacking their opponents. They all had the same thought in their hearts: even if I die, I won't let them rescue the second elder. Gu Duxing and the others were in imminent danger. The second elder was a 3rd-grade emperor-level expert. So, how could Gu Duxing and the other 3rd-grade king-level experts deal with him? The 4 of them had already gone all out. But they were retreating step by step. They were firmly suppressed by the second elder alone. However, the 4 of them didn't retreat. Blood had already seeped out of the mouths and noses of the 4 people in this short period of time. Dong Wuxian gave the second elder the most pressure. However, his counterattack was also particularly fierce. His face was covered with blood at this moment. The web between his thumb and index finger had been shattered. He had no choice but to hold his saber with both hands and attack crazily. The second elder had suppressed the 4 people in a disadvantageous position. However, the 4 of them were sticking to his body like sticky candy. So, he couldn't get away. He was even more impatient and furious than the 4 of them. That was because he still had time to look around and listen in all directions. He had seen with his own eyes that his third brother's vital energy shield had been broken by the enemy's attacks. Then, his sword had been broken. Then, his palm had been injured. Then, he had been stabbed in the chest. Then, his eyes had been pierced. Then, he had spurted out blood from his entire body. The second elder's heart was bleeding. However, he couldn't rush over no matter what. He would have been able to pull the third elder out of that sword light in the blink of an eye if he had rushed over earlier. Then, he would have saved him. He would have been seriously injured and crippled. But he would have been able to save his life. However, he was so anxious that his heart was bleeding. But he couldn't move even a step. Someone would have knocked him back with a weapon as long as he wanted to move. He would have knocked him back even if he had to sacrifice his own life. He could have reversed the situation of this battle. However, he was powerless to do so. This made the second elder extremely sullen. He was about to go crazy with rage. It had only been a moment, but the other side was already done. His third brother had turned into a pile of blood foam in the air. And the murderer who had killed his third brother with his own hands was rushing towards him on his sword. "Damned Sword King!" the second elder yelled furiously. His eyes had turned red. "Come, come! All of you, come!" he roared crazily. Chu Yang came from the sky. His sword flashed in the air. It was a move of what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world. This move came from 100 feet away. The moment it arrived was the moment when its power was at its greatest. "Du Xing!" Chu Yang roared. His voice resounded through the clouds. Gu Duxing responded. He attacked crazily and immediately took a step back. Chu Yang had already passed through this gap with the momentum of a thunderbolt. He rushed towards the second elder, who was busy dealing with Dong Wuxian, Luo Kedi, and Ji Mo's attacks. The second elder's beard flared. He shouted angrily, "Come!" He didn't dodge. Instead, he used his energy shield to block the attacks of Dong Wuxian and the other 2. He also flew up on his sword and met Chu Yang in midair. With a loud boom, the 2 sword lights crazily collided in midair. Chapter 496. The attack of the Tribulation Sword was mixed with the unparalleled sharpness of the Tribulation Sword in the world. So, its might was extremely formidable. especially since the tribulation sword had swallowed so many exotic metals and medicinal herbs during this period of time. So, its might had become even more formidable than before. However, the second elder was a third-grade emperor-level expert. So, he was a grade higher than Chu Yang. The quality of his sword was far inferior to Chu Yang's. However, his profound spiritual power wasn't to be trifled with either. The two sword lights collided with each other like two meteors. There was a loud bang, and the brilliant sword lights exploded all over the sky. The entire chill wind forest fiercely trembled at this moment. The cement of the swamp fiercely jumped up with a loud bang, and splashed up to a height of more than 100 feet. Dong Wushang, Luo Kudi, and GMO, who were the closest to the impact, let out a miserable groan at the same time. They were sent flying by the huge impact, and fell to the ground with a bang. Chu Yang and the second elder screamed at the same time. Their bodies were sent flying backwards at the same time. Blood arrows had been spurted out from different parts of their bodies. Both of them had been seriously injured by this blow. Chu Yang's chest and shoulders had been hit by the setting sail watermark, his lower abdomen, and his shoulders. The second elder's chest and shoulders had also been hit by the setting sail watermark, and his legs and arms had also been hit by the setting sail watermark. Chu Yang's body was still in midair. He had already prepared an incomplete version of the heavy pill, and had stuffed it into his mouth. Chu Yang had consumed 2 incomplete versions of the heavy pill in this insignificant battle that had lasted less than a breath's time. This clearly showed how tragic this battle was. One could imagine that Chu Yang would have died at least once if he didn't have the heavy pill. Chu Yang had the heavy pill, but the second elder didn't have such a godly item. The intensity of this attack had completely dispersed the power of the domain on the second elder's body. And the spiritual energy cover had disappeared without a trace. Even an emperor-level expert would consume a lot of his true elemental energy every time he used such a life-saving method. So, how could he dare to use the domain again in such a fierce battle? The body of the second elder hadn't even landed on the ground when Gu Du-Xing, who had just retreated to make preparations, had already fused with his sword. The sword light soared high into the sky, and shot towards the body of the second elder. The second elder felt a sense of crisis. So he roared, and fiercely circulated the spirit energy in his entire body. Suddenly, several wounds on his body started to spurt out blood. But he managed to hang on to his last breath. He circulated his spirit energy, and once again collided with Gu Du-Xing in midair. This was a desperate attack from a third-grade sword king. The second elder did his best to counterattack, and the two of them fiercely collided. At the same time, they screamed and screamed. Gu Du-Xing clenched his teeth, and flew backwards in the air without feeling anything. Blood spurted out from 3 places on his body, and filled the air. He had been injured by the second elder's fists and fingers. 7 of his ribs had been broken. His entire chest had almost caved in, but the front half of the black dragon longsword in his hand was dripping with blood. His sword had already pierced deeply into second elder's right chest, and he was forced back by the other party's counterattack. Second elder drifted backwards again. He was already heavily injured. At this moment, Dong Wushang roared like a hungry wolf. He became one with his saber, and rushed over. GMO and Luo Kudi also became one with their swords. They followed behind Dong Wushang, and attacked the second elder with all their might. The attacking style of these 3 people was the same as Gu Du-Xing's a moment ago. They were all risking their lives. They were putting their entire strength, heart, soul, and life into this attack. The second elder won't die. We will die. This is a clear thought. Therefore, we must take advantage of his illness to take his life. Chu Yang shouted from afar. He turned over and jumped up. His calamity sword flashed, and he once again used what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world. He flew high up in the air with his sword. The second elder's heart was filled with intense regret. I should have retreated and escaped when I discovered the ambush. Even if you beat me to death, I wouldn't have thought that these 5 youngsters would be so abnormal. I'm a third-grade emperor-level expert. A third-grade Emperor-level expert. I'm facing the danger of losing my life. However, he didn't have time to regret. Dong Wuxiang had already become one with his saber. The second elder roared in despair. He once again gathered the remaining strength of his body, and crazily collided with Dong Wuxiang. Dong Wuxiang shouted. The heavy black saber flew out of his hand, and spun in the air. However, this third-grade saber king had risked his life to attack. But this had made the second elder's situation even worse. He fiercely spouted out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't suppress the injuries in his body as he spouted out this mouthful of blood. He spouted out several mouthfuls of blood in succession. His eyes had already turned somewhat dim. His left hand drooped down softly. It had been smashed to pieces by the heavy black saber. At this moment, GMO and Luo Kudi combined their swords, and rushed over with a loud roar. The second elder screamed. He suddenly attacked with his remaining right hand. Countless poisonous fog and black gas suddenly emerged from his body. This was his last life-saving trick, igniting the starting voyage water seal to burn his own poison, and fight for a chance to escape. The poison that had been cultivated in the starting voyage water seal for over 100 years would be completely destroyed after it was burned. It wouldn't be able to be used again. This was something that could only be used at the last moment. The second elder wouldn't have done this if he hadn't been forced to the point where he was at the end of his rope. However, GMO and Luo Kudi weren't afraid at all. They forcibly broke through the poisonous fog, and rushed in. You aren't afraid of poison? The second elder screamed in despair. Two bang! Bang! Sounds were heard as the two men and their swords collided with his body. The second elder screamed. Blood splashed out from his body like a bloody gourd. There were at least 100 wounds on his body, and his flesh was torn apart at the same time. Crack! Crack! Sounds were heard from his chest. It was unknown how many bones had been broken. However, he was still able to escape. There was a big tree behind him. He stamped his feet, and used the last of his strength to rush up. He would have been able to fly out as long as he had stamped on the tree trunk. However, it was too late. A brilliant sword light rushed over like a meteor, and cut off all the second elder's hopes. Chu Yang! Calamity sword! What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? Chu Yang burst open a big bloody hole in the second elder's chest with a bang sound. Then, he rushed out of his body. The light in the second elder's eyes dimmed. He stood powerlessly on the top of the tree. Then, he suddenly let out a long sigh. His head lowered, and rolled down from his neck with a rumbling sound. Then, his fragmented body fell down from the tree. It fell halfway, and scattered into a pile of minced meat. Chu Yang and the others had smeared the poison on their swords when they fell on the ground. This pile of minced meat instantly turned into black water, and completely decayed. Chu Yang whistled as he came back on his flying sword. He arrived beside the unconscious Gu Duxing, and fed him an incomplete version of the heavy pill. Then, he jumped up without looking. He whistled, and rushed towards the other king-level experts with GMO and Luo Kudi. The outcome had been decided. All the experts of the O clan had been annihilated. Not a single one of them had escaped. Everyone had been thinking about this battle for a long time. That was because this was a battle of life and death in the truest sense of the word. Even if they had been a little bit negligent, or even a little bit uncooperative, then they would have been the ones lying here at this moment. Chapter 497. This fight had lasted for less than a quarter of an hour. No, it wasn't even 1/3 of a quarter of an hour. However, this was the most dangerous fight that Chu Yang and his brothers had faced since their debut. In fact, each of them had exhausted all of their strength in this fight. Everyone had been circling around the door of death countless times. But fortunately, we won. We won! Shua Duxing sat up from the ground. His blood-stained face exposed a brilliant smile. Won? Dong Wuxiang, Luo Kudi, and the others felt as if they were dreaming. They still couldn't believe these words. This fight had been a sneak attack and a plot. But they had been outnumbered after all. Moreover, the two leaders of the opposite party were genuine Emperor-level experts. They felt a dull pain in their chests. They had been injured by the Emperor-level experts. They still had a lingering fear in their hearts. But the enemy had already been annihilated. It was a dreamlike and unreal scene. Dong Wushang's heavy black saber was inserted straight into the ground. It was emitting a cold and majestic radiance. The people of the O clan had slowly turned into a puddle of blood. They were rotting in this gloomy chill wind forest. Shua Duxing and the others slowly stood up. They looked at the human tragedy that they had created with their own hands. They were collectively silent. Only their throats were gasping for breath. This is only the beginning. More and more powerhouses will fall because they have offended us in the future, Chu Yang insipidly said after they had calmed down a little. We killed 5 Emperor-level experts today. But we also died. We brothers would have died 10 times if we hadn't plotted against them. Chu Yang stood up. His sharp vision swept over the faces of his brothers. He slowly extended his hand, and slowly clenched it into a fist. His eyes were fixed on his fist. He slowly said in a low and deep voice, But we will make such Emperor-level experts fall under our hands one day, and we can destroy them with a flip of our hand. He had spoken the last few words very slowly, but they were brimming with strong self-confidence. The brothers looked at Chu Yang's clenched fist, and slowly stretched it. Then, he fiercely flipped it over, and pressed it down. They couldn't help but feel their hearts throbbing violently. It seemed as if this palm had crushed an Emperor-level expert into fine powder. It's that easy. Chu Yang turned around and smiled. His snow-white teeth sparkled in the dense fog. Everyone looked at him quietly. Their eyes were shining, but they did not say a word. After a long time, Shua Duxing slowly turned his head. He looked at the king-level expert of the Shua clan and said, I wish to follow Big Brother Chu and join the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Everyone, are you willing to come along? The two men looked at each other. Then, the leader of the king-level experts, Shua Qingfeng, took a step forward, and solemnly said, We brothers are not proficient in our studies. So, it will be difficult for us to make even an inch of progress in our lives. It's rare for the young master to have such great ambitions. We brothers are willing to help the young master at all costs to fulfill his wish. At your beck and call, at your beck and call. He smiled bleakly as he looked at his brother's corpse lying in a pool of blood. He said in a low voice, The pot never breaks when it leaves the well. A general can't avoid dying in battle. We, the people of Jianghu, know that every step we take will lead to death. The only thing we can't let go of is the precarious situation of our Shua clan. If the young master can reach the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, then, even if you don't represent the Shua clan, there will still be one person surnamed Shua in the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. We brothers will have no regrets even if we die. Shua Duxing took a deep breath. He felt that the rims of his eyes were somewhat hot as he said, I'm the Shua clan's young master. So, I'm naturally a member of the Shua clan. If there is such a person, then the Heavenly Armament Pavilion will have the name of my Shua clan. Everyone knelt down in an orderly manner. Their old tears streamed down their faces. We're willing to follow the young master and join the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. We'll have no regrets even if we have to die 10,000 times. Shua Duxing nodded and said, The Heavenly Armament Pavilion is still weak at the moment. It's inappropriate to reveal our secrets and identities, this. Shua Qingfeng solemnly said. This is natural. Everything has its own rules and regulations. It's not the first day that we've come to Jianghu. So, we naturally understand, no matter what, we've been mingling in the 3 heavens for more than half of our lives. So, we're confident that we know more than the young clan lords. We can pay attention to many things in the future. Shua Duxing nodded with gratification. A trace of a smile appeared on his cold face. He had used some means to drive away those 3 people who had an unstable position. So, he had left behind some loyal and reliable people to form the first team of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. He would have a great chance of success if he had this group of Jianghu veterans with him in the future. Everyone discussed for a while. Then, they buried the dead king-level expert. Then, they continued to move forward without stopping. "We'll come back to settle this account with the O clan sooner or later." Chu Yang gazed in the direction of the O clan before he left. He slowly said after a long time, "The O clan won't exist in the next 3 heavens." He turned around and left. He didn't even look back on the way. He was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. The O clan had schemed against him, and had caused the tragic death of one of his men. His brothers had also been seriously injured. So, how could Chu Yang not remember this account in his heart? Xia Duxing remained silent in front of the new grave for a long time. His complexion was like iron, and his eyes were expressionless. He suddenly grabbed a handful of soil from the grave before he left. Then, he stuffed it into his mouth, and swallowed it. He knelt down, and heavily kowtowed 3 times. Then, he got up, and strode away. He didn't look back. "This enmity is mine. I'll settle this debt for you. I won't say anything. But you'll know my intentions if your spirit is still there. I'll return to the Chill Wind Forest after I've killed the O clan's people. And I'll tell you, so that you can rest in peace." Xia Duxing didn't say these words out loud. In fact, he didn't say a single word. However, he had made an ironclad vow in his heart. He left in large strides. His black cloak fluttered in the wind. And he left behind a straight and sword-like silhouette in the Chill Wind Forest. Enmity is in the heart, but kindness is in the heart. Enmity must be repaid with one's own hands. Kindness must be repaid 10,000 times over. This was Xia Duxing's principle. The Chill Wind Forest was once again shrouded in a dense fog after everyone had left. It seemed as if the remnant souls of the new arrivals were howling and crying. But it also seemed as if the heroic souls of the Shou clan were smiling and waving their hands to bid farewell. 3 days later, at the O clan, the teacup in the hand of the clan lord, O Qingwu, fell to the ground with a bang, and shattered into pieces. The complexions of the great elder and the others were gloomy, as if they wanted to eat someone alive. O Du Zhao's complexion was deathly pale. He opened his mouth, but his lips were trembling. But he couldn't utter a single word. This king-level expert had come to report the completion of his mission while carrying 3 heads. However, the others had chased them into the Chill Wind Forest, and hadn't returned. The informants in the Chill Wind Forest had reported back. King of Hell Chu and his group of 12 people had passed through the forest safe and sound. Everyone was in high spirits. And a few of them were injured. The informants who had gone to the Chill Wind Forest had reported back. Looking at the traces left behind in the Chill Wind Forest, it seemed that there had been a battle between experts. Judging from the traces left behind at the scene, the experts who had fought with each other were at the Emperor level. The battlefield had been extremely tragic. The trees in the vicinity of several thousand feet had been destroyed. The battle had been fought, and the situation had been so tragic. King of Hell Chu and his group were safe and sound. Moreover, the second elder and his group hadn't returned. So, even a fool could guess what had happened. The second elder and his group had been annihilated. Moreover, their corpses had been destroyed without leaving any trace behind. They had lost 5 Emperor-level experts and 24 King-level experts. This was a huge blow to the O clan. It was as if the sky had collapsed. There were only 5 Emperor-level experts. In total, there were more than 50 King-level experts. But the remaining 20 or so were experts who had been hired for external aid. As for the true hardcore experts of the clan, there were only 30 of them. These people were the most reliable. So, the O clan wasn't afraid that the information would leak out. Therefore, they had been dispatched to carry out this mission. But they hadn't expected, 24 of them had died. That king-level expert had luckily returned because he hadn't gone with them. Moreover, he had come out of the Chill Wind Forest uninjured if he had gone with them. Perhaps, he would have died in vain. The O clan was in a gloomy and miserable state. Cheng-Wu was regretting his decision to the bone. Had I known that King of Hell Chu's group was so powerful? How could I have thought of plotting against them? The clan had clearly decided to take advantage of this opportunity to mend relations with the four big clans before King of Hell Chu's arrival. This was a powerful opportunity that had delivered itself to our doorstep. But this opportunity has been ruined because of everyone's greed. Moreover, we have lost the lives of 5 Emperor-level experts and 24 King-level experts. Moreover, we have made powerful enemies. Why do we have to do this? It seems that King of Hell Chu's group is hiding some super experts. The Great Elder's chest was heaving up and down violently. His voice was trembling. But he forced himself to remain calm as he analyzed. Moreover, these guys haven't suffered any casualties under our siege. This shows that these little guys have boundless prospects in the future. Moreover, they have the support of the 4 big clans behind them. They haven't received the mission yet. It seems that they are taking revenge on us because they don't have enough strength. It seems that this enmity has been sown. They will come sooner or later, the Great Elder said in a heavy voice. Therefore, we can't sit still and wait for death. Everything will be over in case we are suppressed by the army of the 4 big clans. I will look for them to take revenge even if they don't come. How can I let them off so easily? Du Xiao clenched his teeth. The blue veins on his temples were throbbing. No matter what, a clan must first consider the strategy of self-preservation. Then, we must think about the strategy of destroying the enemy. Du Xiao, you still need to temper yourself. You must take revenge. But there are many more things that are more important than revenge. There is no other way out of a moment of hot-bloodedness, except for destruction. The Great Elder coldly glanced at Du Xiao and said, The most important thing for us at present isn't revenge. It's self-preservation. What's the use of killing all of them if the old clan is gone? Du Xiao's face turned red as he replied, Yes. Great Elder's teachings are correct. He drew back 2 steps and said in his heart, These people are your brothers. Wouldn't you scold me for being heartless if I didn't show some anger? Chapter 498. At present, we can only form an alliance, the Great Elder said in a heavy voice. Our current enemies are King of Hell Chu, Shaw clan, Ji clan, Luo clan, and Dong clan because of this matter. In addition, there are 2 of their staunch allies, Mo clan and Xia clan. The Great Elder raised his fingers and coldly said, But Gu clan is the weakest. Mo clan has just suffered a great change. So, its strength can't be considered as strong. Ji clan is the same. We can't rely on them. But we can't pull them down. Only Luo clan, Dong clan, and Xia clan are comparable in strength to our old clan. He heaved a long sigh and sadly said, Our clan has just lost so many experts. So, we can't be compared with these 3 clans. This old man made a mistake in his calculation. He paused, and didn't speak for a long time. Then, he continued with a sorrowful look on his face. Let's analyze the situation of the enemy and our own clans. Ji clan and Gao clan already have irreconcilable enmity. Mo clan and Black Devil clan are also irreconcilable. Dong clan and Tian clan are also constantly fighting. Shaw clan and Tu clan have deep enmity. There's also the Zhao clan. They've been suppressed by the Luo clan for a long time. Meng Su, who's in a difficult situation now, is also a force to be reckoned with. As for the Xia clan, they've been at odds with the Li clan ever since Xia Dan Qiong rejected their marriage proposal. The Great Elder said in a profound manner, The enemy of our enemy is our friend. If we can get in touch with them, we will be able to. The power of the 8 great clans is not weak. The Great Elder was worthy of being called an experienced and astute Jianhu veteran. His calculations were very clear and orderly. Although they had suffered a great change, they hadn't lost their minds. Qingwu's eyes lit up. Great Elder is wise. Well, the enemy has faintly joined forces. And we need to start our operation now. We are a step behind in terms of time. But they have to deal with the spirit beasts this time. This is our time. The great elder frowned. But we need to be especially vigilant against the dark bamboo. I heard that Dukyu of the dark bamboo has a good personal relationship with King of Hell Chu. I don't know how good this relationship is. Will it affect the dark bamboo's attack? If the dark bamboo attacks, we have no chance of winning. O Qingwu's complexion turned gloomy as he said. Even if we contact the Ao clan and the Li clan to stand on our side, we can only be evenly matched. In fact, we might even be at a disadvantage. You're wrong. If bamboo were to interfere, the situation would become even more chaotic. This is because bamboo has conflicts with all of the other clans. There have been conflicts. The great elder snorted and said, As for the Ao clan, don't even think about it. The Ao clan won't get involved in this mess, unless we kill Ao Shiyan now and shift the blame to these clans. Speaking up to this point, he suddenly stopped talking. His eyes were deep as he pondered. O Qingwu's eyes also lit up. In an instant, the hall fell silent. After a long while, O Qingwu stood up and said, There's no time to lose. I'll immediately arrange for the people of the great families. Bring some natural treasures. The great elder said gloomily. Now that we have a favor to ask of others, we have no choice but to spend money. Even if we keep those things, we'll just keep them. At the critical moment, we'll need to use them. O Qingwu replied. All right. Then, he immediately arranged for O Du Xiao to bring some people to get them. Then, he began to arrange the people on the side in a rush to prepare for the diplomatic mission. However, it didn't take long for O Du Xiao to rush over. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat. His face was distorted beyond recognition. It seemed as if he had lost his mind. It's not good. What's the matter? O Qingwu was startled. Have they already come knocking on our door? The great elder became even more dissatisfied. You need to be calm in the face of trouble. How can you be in such a panic? O Du Zhao's face was covered in soybean-sized beads of sweat. He almost wanted to cry. Our hidden treasure house has been robbed. Our natural treasures are gone. What? The great elder fiercely stood up. His chair fell to the ground with a bang sound. However, he didn't care about it. His old eyes that were always hidden in his wrinkles suddenly opened wide like copper bells. Say that again? It's been robbed. It's really been robbed. O Du Zhao's voice carried a sobbing tone. Not even a little bit. O Qingwu fiercely drew back 3 steps. His complexion had turned as white as snow. Let's go and take a look. The great elder stood in the empty hidden treasure house not long after. He looked at the empty heavenly fragrance jade boxes. His eyes were lifeless. He didn't speak for a long time. He seemed as if he had lost his soul. Then, he suddenly spouted out a mouthful of blood after a long time. He then looked up to the sky. Oh God, is it possible that the heaven wants my O clan to perish? O Qingwu's entire body trembled. His vision was in a mess. He muttered, How can this be? The O clan had collected these natural treasures in the past for the purpose of promoting their cultivation. However, many of them had become useless once they had reached a certain amount. Therefore, they had sealed them up. The clan had become more and more powerful, and they had resorted to all sorts of tricks and robberies. Therefore, they had collected more and more of these things. In the past, O Qingwu had only thought that he could slowly cultivate and accumulate these good things since he had so many of them. After all, these natural treasures could be used to make poisons when the clan's poison level had reached a new level. And these natural treasures could be used to supplement and stimulate the poison. This was the highest level of poison. Therefore, he had always managed them with great care. However, he hadn't expected that these natural treasures would be stolen at this critical juncture when the O clan needed them the most. There are still some residual things inside. A lot of them are just powders. And a lot of them are dried up elixirs, O Du Xiao said in a daze. O Qingwu suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He said, Could it be that King of Hell Chu did it? Du Xiao shook his head. It shouldn't be. I've been inseparable from King of Hell Chu ever since he came here. He doesn't have any opportunity to do such a thing. It must be someone else. Investigate! Qingwu roared. The elixirs were gone. Moreover, the precious materials had been taken away by King of Hell Chu. The O clan was a big clan. But it had fallen into an awkward situation where it didn't have any gifts to give. Upper three heavens, Chu Fei Ling's return to the Chu clan had caused a huge uproar. No one had expected that Chu Fei Ling would find the mysterious young jade so quickly. Mr. Yu was greatly surprised when he received the mysterious young jade. His white beard was blown straight, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Mysterious young jade core? Where did you get this treasure? I got it by chance. It's pure luck. Chu Fei Ling smiled gently and elegantly. He didn't want to expose the existence of his little brother. Chu Fei Long would have dealt with him to vent his anger if he had known about it. Your luck is very good. Mr. Yu looked at him with envy. This old man has been looking for it for more than 100 years. But I haven't even seen a single hair of this thing. Chu Fei Ling said. Mr. Yu, my father's injury won't be a problem now that I have this thing, right? There's absolutely no problem. Mr. Yu patted his chest and said, I brought the mysterious young jade core here. So, I might as well smash my own reputation and become a beggar if I still can't heal Clan Lord Chu. Chu Fei Ling heaved a sigh of relief. He gratefully said, Thank you, Mr. Yu. I've troubled you. Mr. Yu chuckled. Big brother, I heard that you've returned? Have you found the mysterious young jade? A voice was heard. It was full of concern. A man walked in with large strides as this voice sounded. He had a handsome face and a tall stature. He was dressed in a brocade robe. His hair wasn't messy. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's even when he was looking at people in a gentle manner. But this person's eyes were as deep as the sea. Moreover, his bearing was extraordinary. He stood like a deep pool and a high mountain. His every move was full of natural authority. He was the second son of the Chu clan, Chu Fei Long. I've found it. Father's injury shouldn't be a problem. Chu Fei Ling looked at his second brother with a complicated look in his eyes. He then insipidly said, That's great! Chu Fei Long's spirit was suddenly lifted. He grabbed Chu Fei Ling's hand and said in a pleasantly surprised manner, Big brother, we have to thank you for this trip. Third brother and I haven't been able to eat for the past few days. Alas, it's fortunate that big brother came back early. Otherwise, third brother would have been blaming himself even if I could have held on. I'm afraid that he wouldn't have been able to hold on. As he spoke, he sighed. Third brother is like this. He's very thoughtful. I've told him a few times. This guy really gives me a headache. Chu Fei Ling swallowed his saliva, and his Adam's apple moved. He smiled and said, Thanks to the two of you for taking care of us during my absence. Second brother, it's been hard on you. Chu Fei Long was displeased. He said earnestly, Big brother, what are you saying? We're blood-related brothers. We share the same mother. Besides, it's only right that Zhao Shua is our father. How can it be hard on me? Big brother, you've been running around, and this has made me feel uneasy. You must rest well for a few days and recuperate. Big brother, you're the pillar of our clan. If you collapse from exhaustion, we really don't know what to do. He spoke affectionately, and laughed heartily. He held his big brother's hand affectionately. His eyes were full of sincerity. He stared at his big brother frankly. The rims of his eyes were a little red. It was evident that he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Chu Fei Ling sighed sadly in his heart. He thought of the Saber Emperor who chased after him in the lower three heavens. Second brother, is it really you? I'm really willing to believe that the person in front of me is the real you. Mr. Yu looked at this scene, and couldn't help but say enviously. You brothers have such a good relationship. It's rare to see such brothers in other clans. Chu Fei Long laughed and said sincerely, Mr. Yu, you're praising me so much that I'm blushing. We share the same mother. If we don't have a good relationship, can we still be brothers? Big Brother has always taken care of us since we were young. He's always shouldered everything for us. He's willing to work hard without complaint. If such a big brother isn't worthy of respect, then there's no big brother in the world who's worthy of respect. Mr. Yu nodded with gratification and said, I'm going to treat Clan Master Chu's injuries. You brothers haven't seen each other for a long time. You should have a good chat. He walked in while sighing. Chapter 499. A figure flashed, and Chu Fei-yen rushed in. Big Brother, you're back. I heard that you've found the mysterious young jade? His hands trembled nervously as he stared at Chu Fei-ling. Chu Fei-ling nodded and smiled. I found it. That's great, that's great. Chu Fei-yen jumped up and realized that his second brother was also here. He hurriedly greeted him. Second brother, you're here too. His voice was somewhat nervous. His second brother had always been very kind to him, and had taken care of him meticulously. But he didn't know why, but he felt afraid every time he saw his second brother. He was far less affectionate than his big brother. Chu Fei-yen didn't know what was going on. Third brother, you can't change your impatient temper. Chu Fei-long frowned. You're a man with a family and a business, but you're still like a child. What has disappointed you with big brother's work? You're still asking. Chu Fei-long reprimanded him, but pulled his younger brother over, and carefully blew away the dust on his collar. He patted his younger brother's messy hair, and was full of love. But he still rebuked him with a sullen face. Be more careful in the future. Look at you, what have you become? Chu Fei-yen scratched his head and smiled mischievously. He was somewhat embarrassed. Big brother is better, but second brother always treats me like a child. This is really annoying. But second brother's love for me is really indescribable. Chu Fei-ling looked on from one side, and smiled. But he sighed painfully in his heart. Chu Fei-long's performance was impeccable, and he had deceived everyone except for himself. But how could Chu Fei-ling's personal experience be deceived? He and his wife had been chased repeatedly, and their son had been missing for 18 years. 3 heavenly saber emperors had besieged them. Could it be that all of this is fake? Second brother, what do you want? The 3 brothers sat for a while. Then footsteps were heard from inside. Mr. Yu walked out quickly and smiled. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Chu Fei-ling and Chu Fei-yen stood up together, and were overjoyed. A cold light flashed in Chu Fei-long's eyes. Then, he also stood up in ecstasy, and grabbed Mr. Yu's hand. Thank you, mister! Thank you, mister! Mister's great kindness to the Chu clan makes me shed tears of gratitude. I can't thank you enough. Please accept my bow. As he spoke, he actually fell to his knees with a plop and kowtowed repeatedly. His face was filled with tears of gratitude. His true feelings were revealed. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. Second Master Chu, you've really wronged me. Mr. Yu was very relieved. He hurriedly helped Chu Fei-long up. An old man with a leopard head and round eyes walked out with a satisfied smile. He was the head of the Chu clan, Chu Xiongqing. The dark aura on his face had already been swept away, and his face was glowing red. It was obvious that his injuries had healed quite well. You're all here. Not bad. Felice, it's all thanks to you this time. Chu Xiongqing laughed. Father, it's good that you've recovered. It's only right for me to work hard, Chu Fei-ling said respectfully. Big brother, has sister-in-law returned? Chu Fei-yen asked. She went to the lower 3 heavens, but I've already sent her a message. I think she'll be back in a few days, Chu Fei-ling said with a smile. Sister-in-law is alone. Don't let anything happen to her, Chu Fei-yen said worriedly. Your sister-in-law went down with her master. She'll definitely be fine, Chu Fei-ling said meaningfully. Big brother, you're really thoughtful. Chu Fei-long laughed. If Lord Lan is willing to take action, then there are only a few people in the entire heavens who can hurt sister-in-law. Big brother and sister-in-law are deeply in love with each other. You really love your wife very much. Ha! Except for Chu Fei-ling, everyone laughed together. Chu Fei-ling only felt depressed, but he had to accompany them and laugh a few times. After a few days, Yang Ruolan finally returned to the Chu clan, but she came back alone. After she greeted the master, she was pulled back by Chu Fei-ling. Why did you come back so late? Chu Fei-ling was a little anxious. I went to do some things on the way, Yang Ruolan said. What's the matter? Something big. Chu Fei-ling's face was serious. I encountered Yiran Mo leading 8 saber emperors in the lower 3 heavens. They attacked me with a formation on the 5th day of the lower 3 heavens. He started to take action again? Yang Ruolan's complexion changed. He's really seizing every opportunity to deal with us. Are you okay? Yang Ruolan heard this, and realized that there was something fishy about this matter. I'm fine. Fortunately, I had my sworn younger brother. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to come back this time. Chu Fei-ling sighed. He couldn't help but reveal a warm smile on his face when he thought of Chu Yang. It wasn't because Chu Yang had given him so many gifts. It was because Chu Fei-ling felt a genuine affection for his sworn younger brother. Your sworn younger brother? Yang Ruolan asked in amusement. When did you have another sworn younger brother? You can't rely on your own brothers. So you have another sworn younger brother? Haha, my sworn younger brother is very resourceful, Chu Fei-ling said mysteriously. Chu Fei-ling said mysteriously. Then, he focused on observing the movements around him. I'll tell you this, but you mustn't tell anyone else. This mysterious young jade core was given to me by my sworn younger brother. Ah? Your sworn younger brother is so generous? Yang Ruolan asked in astonishment. This mysterious young jade core is the most precious treasure in the world. But he's willing to give it to someone else? This is nothing. My sworn younger brother has given me a lot of good things. Chu Fei-ling smiled and said, It's a pity that second brother is very popular at home. He's very close to everyone. So, I can't tell him about this matter. Otherwise, it would have reached his ears, alas. How's your sworn younger brother's cultivation? Yang Ruolan tightly knitted her brows and said, You can't tell him if his strength is low. He has ruined Chu Fei-long's plan. So, Chu Fei-long won't let him off. Yes, I have this concern. Chu Fei-ling nodded and said, My sworn younger brother's cultivation is only at the 2nd grade of Sword King. That's troublesome. But won't Yiran Mo tell you even if you don't tell him? Yang Ruolan worriedly said, He's still as dangerous as before. There's no harm in bringing your sworn younger brother here. We owe him a great debt of gratitude. Wouldn't our conscience be uneasy if we don't care about him? It's all right. Chu Fei-ling slightly smiled. Yiran Mo has already died at the hands of my sworn younger brother. The Yi clan saber emperors have also died with my sworn younger brother's help. None of them survived. That's good. Yang Ruolan heaved a sigh of relief. But then, she suddenly became startled. She realized that something was extremely wrong. She suddenly raised her head, and opened her eyes wide. Wait, what did you say? Yiran Mo has already died at the hands of your sworn younger brother? Your second younger brother's cultivation is only at the 2nd grade of Sword King? He helped you to annihilate the Saber Emperors in one fell swoop. None of them survived? Yes, what's wrong? Chu Fei-ling was somewhat proud as he said, My sworn younger brother is very powerful. Yang Ruolan was dumbstruck. Even if one were to break their heads thinking, they wouldn't be able to imagine how a 2nd grade Sword King could help a 3rd grade Saber Emperor kill the other 2 Saber Emperors. It's like this. My sworn younger brother is very crafty. He didn't use his real ability to kill Yiran Mo. Chu Fei-ling had no choice but to narrate the situation in detail. He then said with a smile, I was shocked at that time, that's true. Yang Ruolan's gaze was lifeless. Take a guess. What's my cultivation level now? Chu Fei-ling asked mysteriously. Aren't you a hidden Saber Emperor? What else is there to guess? Yang Ruolan rolled her eyes at him and said, "Let's talk seriously. How did you and your sworn younger brother meet? Take a look." Chu Feiling stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion. Suddenly, the spirit energy of the entire space was grabbed by his hand. Then, his hand emitted a bright white light. 4 small pure white circles of light were clearly flashing on his hand. Ah! Yang Ruolan fiercely stood up. She looked at her husband in disbelief. Her eyes were full of shock. You, 4th grade Saber Monarch? You're really 4th grade Saber Monarch. But why are the Sovereign King's rings pure white? Yes, my cultivation is at 4th grade Saber Monarch. But my mental state cultivation is at the peak of Saber Monarch level. Chu Feiling's eyes flashed as he said, "That's why the Sovereign King's rings are white." How is this possible? Yang Ruolan covered her small mouth in shock. How can it be so fast? But what's going on with this mental state, Yang Ruolan was an Emperor-level expert. So how could she not know what this meant? A 4th grade Saber Monarch had the mental state of a Saber Monarch. This meant that there was no bottleneck on the road to becoming a Saber Monarch. One would naturally become a Saber Monarch as long as one's cultivation reached a certain level. So, how could it not be easy to increase one's martial power and cultivation? One just had to cultivate. But the most important thing was the mental state. It was possible to seal one's cultivation for a lifetime if one couldn't make a breakthrough in the mental state. For example, if someone had a cultivation of level 3 and a cultivation of level 4, both of them would cultivate together. However, after reaching a certain level, the level 3 cultivator would only be able to consolidate his cultivation, and the excess spiritual energy he absorbed would dissipate soon after. However, the level 4 cultivator would be able to absorb spiritual energy into his body and turn it into cultivation. This was the importance of making a breakthrough in the mental state. This was also the so-called bottleneck. But Chu Feiling's journey was a smooth one. I didn't believe it either. I had been stuck at the Saber Emperor grade for a long time. But my sworn brother gave me a pill. Not only did it increase my cultivation by 5 grades, but it also helped me break through the bottleneck. Moreover, it also promoted my mental cultivation to the Saber Monarch grade. Chu Feiling's eyes flashed. He spoke slowly with a grateful look on his face. What kind of pill? Yang Ruolan felt that her breathing had become rapid. I don't know the name of this pill. Chu Feiling smiled mysteriously and said, but my sworn brother gave me 2 pills. I ate one of them, and my cultivation increased to this level. The other one is for you. Your angina will disappear after you eat it. Moreover, your mental state will also increase to the monarch level. As for how much your martial power and cultivation will increase, that will depend on you. There's such an elixir in the world. Yang Ruolan was so shocked that she was at a loss for words. Didn't I tell you? My sworn brother is very powerful. Chu Feiling smiled proudly. Chapter 500. Chu Feiling took out a purple jade bottle from his bosom as he spoke. He gave it to Yang Ruolan as if it was a treasure. Take it. This is a token of my appreciation for you. Yang Ruolan held the jade bottle in her hand, and felt a comfortable feeling all over her body. She couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. It's really a good thing. Your sworn brother is very good to you. My sworn younger brother is indeed a great benefactor to me. Chu Feiling sighed with emotion and said, my sworn brother also gave us 2 medicinal pills in addition to this. According to him, these 2 pills can bring someone back to life as long as they aren't beheaded on the spot. Moreover, he also gave us a bottle of medicine. After we take it, we'll be able to completely conceal our aura fluctuations. No one will be able to see through us. Yang Ruolan was so shocked that she couldn't speak. These were things that she had never seen or heard of. My sworn brother has given us so many things? Well, my sworn brother also gave you a sword and me a saber. Chu Feiling carefully took out the sword and saber and said, I've tested it. It can cut through iron as if it were mud. It's more than 10 times stronger than my original saber. It can be said that this is the sharpest divine weapon I've ever seen apart from the treasured swords and sabers of the big clans." He took a deep breath and said, "Even the big clans only have a few treasured swords and sabers. And these swords are passed down from their ancestors. They have already become the sacred objects of their respective clans. So, who can see them?" Yang Ruolan had already picked up the sword. She took it out and looked at it. She felt a cold light shining on it. It was like a pool of autumn water that reflected all kinds of things in the world. The weight, the length, the size, and the style were all to her liking. She couldn't help but click her tongue in amazement and said, "Your sworn brother is really a talent. It's rare for him to give me this sword, but it's to my liking. My sworn brother is a heaven-sent genius. I don't know what he doesn't know," Chu Feiling said proudly. Yang Ruolan said, "Your sworn brother has such deep feelings for you. Feiling, you mustn't let him down. Even if it's just one of these things, it's still a huge favor." "Of course," Chu Feiling said with certainty. "You should quickly take this medicine. According to my sworn younger brother, this medicine can only be effective for Emperor-level experts and above. It won't have any effect on anyone below the Emperor realm." Yang Ruolan nodded. She gently and carefully opened the purple jade bottle. Then, she poured out a 7-colored pill from it. A burst of rich and strange fragrance pervaded the air. She didn't dare to neglect it. So, she hastily put it in her mouth. As soon as he put it in, he felt an endless amount of spiritual energy turn into pure energy and rush towards his limbs and bones. He couldn't help but let out a soft end sound. Then, he was brought into a mysterious state by the violent medicinal effects. By the time Yang Ruolan woke up, it was already night time. Chu Feiling had been standing guard at the side, not daring to move. Yang Ruolan opened her eyes and operated her primordial energy. She felt that several bottlenecks in her body that she hadn't been able to break through had suddenly been cleared up. Her spirit was clear and transparent. Many of the meanings of the great Tao that she hadn't understood before had also been cleared up. Her entire body, from her soul to her physical body, felt incomparably relaxed. And his own cultivation had actually increased by a large margin. Awesome! Yang Ruolan was somewhat dumbstruck as she checked her own cultivation. She swallowed her saliva with difficulty and said, "I'm now a 7th-grade Emperor-level expert." She stretched out her hand and condensed her primordial energy. Suddenly 7 oval pure white circles appeared in her hand. She couldn't help but stare blankly. Then she said, "My mental state has also reached the monarch level." She stood up as if she was dreaming. Then she pinched her arm with all her might. She said in a daze, "Is this true? Is it really true?" "It's absolutely true." Chu Feiling held his beloved wife in his arms. However, he found that his wife had already shed tears of surprise. He had never seen his wife so happy since his son had gone missing. So, he couldn't help but feel gratified. Yang Ruolan leaned in her husband's arms in a daze. But she couldn't help but shed tears. She said, my child wouldn't have gone missing if we had this kind of cultivation back then." Chu Feiling heaved a deep sigh, and hugged her even tighter. "I must thank that sworn brother of yours properly." Yang Ruolan wiped her tears and said, "Feiling, there are very few people nowadays who value relationships and treat treasures like dirt. We mustn't fail to live up to his kind intentions." Chu Feiling nodded deeply. He said in order to ease his wife's emotions, "It's strange to say that my sworn brother is only 18 years old. He's very handsome. I feel that he's very familiar when I see him. Moreover, his face is somewhat similar to mine. You tell me, isn't this fate bestowed upon us by heaven?" He spoke in high spirits. But he suddenly realized that Yang Ruolan's delicate body had stiffened in his arms. Then, Yang Ruolan turned around like a whirlwind. Her eyes flashed with tears and hope. She said in a trembling voice, "He's only 18 years old, and looks very similar to you, your sworn brother? Could he be..." Chu Feiling was startled. Could he be our son? Yang Ruolan's eyes burst with an intense ray of hope. She stared at Chu Feiling's face. It can't be! Chu Feiling jumped in fright. He was so frightened by these words that he started to sweat. He wiped his sweat twice and said, It's absolutely impossible. My sworn brother is brave and resourceful. He's domineering and awe-inspiring. He kills decisively and is full of tricks. He's a top-notch talent in the world. Our son, if he's as capable as my sworn brother, then I'll have no regrets even if I die now. He thought in his heart, motherfucker, if that little boy is really my son, then I'll die of shame. I'll become sworn brothers with my own son. I'm afraid this matter will become the most legendary story in the heavens. I can't say this casually. What's the name of your sworn brother? Yang Ruolan didn't pay attention to his joke. She continued to ask. It's very strange. His surname is also Chu, and his name is Chu Yang. Chu Feiling coughed twice and said, Chu Yang? King of Hell Chu of the lower three heavens? Yang Ruolan took a step back. Her eyes emitted an unbelievable light. How can it be him? Is it him? It should be. I haven't seen King of Hell Chu. But my sworn brother has indeed come from the lower three heavens. Chu Feiling nodded. That's right. Yang Ruolan muttered. Suddenly, her face turned red. She recalled that she had just taught that King of Hell Chu a lesson. But she hadn't expected that he was her husband's sworn brother. He was a great benefactor of the entire Chu clan. Am I being ungrateful? She couldn't help but feel ashamed as she thought of this. However, she recalled that King of Hell Chu was a frivolous and hooligan. Then she recalled her husband's evaluation of him. Brave and resourceful, awe-inspiring and awe-inspiring. He kills decisively and is full of tricks. So, she felt that it wasn't quite the same. Moreover, her husband had said, My sworn brother's appearance is somewhat similar to mine, but the King of Hell Chu I saw didn't resemble me at all. Could it be that there are two people? Yang Ruolan became suspicious. I came back late this time because I had to do something, and the target's name is Chu Yang. Yang Ruolan thought for a while. Then, she told the whole story. Chu Feiling was startled. He listened carefully. Then, his expression changed as he listened. He said, You abandoned him? My sworn brother isn't that kind of person. You must have made a mistake. Your master does things arbitrarily. He only cares about his own preferences. He doesn't care about other people's feelings. Moreover, did your junior sister ask you to help her vent her anger? She was willing to do so. What does it have to do with you? Who asked you to deal with her lover? You're simply unreasonable. Yang Ruolan's face turned red. She said, This matter is indeed somewhat lacking in consideration. What do you mean by somewhat lacking in consideration? It's ridiculous. Chu Feiling said angrily. I don't know whether you're dealing with my sworn brother or not, but how can you and I face him in the future if you're dealing with him? Yang Ruolan's face turned red. She said, But this Chu Yang is somewhat glib-tongued. Moreover, he's a king-level expert at the age of 18. But he's like a hooligan. His appearance doesn't resemble yours at all. Moreover, he doesn't have a calm aura. Perhaps they're two different people. Chu Feiling wrinkled his brows and said, That's possible. He muttered to himself for a while. Then he said, I'm still somewhat worried. I'll go and take a look after we've dealt with the Spirit Beast Tide and the 3 Stars Divine Clan. Yang Ruolan said, That's good. I'll go with you when the time comes. I'll thank him in person. And I'll personally apologize to him and ask for his forgiveness if I've wronged him that time. Chu Feiling nodded. He said in his heart, How could my sworn brother be so easily plotted against by you? That's impossible. He may not be alone. His wisdom and cultivation can go unimpeded for 3 days. 3 days. Chu Yang and the others finally arrived at the northern wilderness after a long and arduous journey. The closer they got, the colder they felt. Everyone sucked in a mouthful of cold air when they finally arrived at the northern wilderness. What a huge glacier and snowfield! They saw that the peaks were wrapped in jade. And it was a world of ice and snow for thousands of miles. It was majestic and boundless. Chu Yang had never been here in his previous life. So, he had thought that there would be shadows of people flying everywhere since so many people from the big clans had arrived in the three heavens. However, he realized that this wasn't the case when he arrived here. He couldn't see a single human figure as far as his eyes could see. He also didn't know where those people had gone. However, they were so insignificant that they could be ignored even if they were standing on the glacier. "We've finally arrived!" Chu Yang's black robe was fluttering in the cold wind. He slowly stepped onto the ice field. He felt the bone-chilling cold coming from the front. The sky was filled with boundless white snow. He suddenly felt a surge of heroic spirit in his heart. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.